Good evening. My name's Chuck Iovan, and I'll be presiding over this evening's joint meeting of the Malden City Council Ordinance Committee and the Malden Planning Board, January 11th, 2023. A few administrative items first. For those in attendance, under the provisions of the open meeting law, attendees are informed that this meeting is being recorded by Urban Media Arts, formerly MATV. I have not been notified that any other video or audio recording of this meeting will occur. The next item we will do is we will do a roll call of the planning board, and then we will turn it over to the city council. So if we could start with Risa Gray.
Risa Gray, Planning Board.
Tawadaj Gabrasalasi, Planning Board.
Diane Shuha, Planning Board.
Ken Antonucci, Planning Board.
Chuck Iovan, Planning Board.
Michelle Romero, City Planner.
Eric McCush, Planning Board.
Pat Hayes, Planning Board.
Eric Henry, Planning Board.
Henry Susi, Planning Board.
Thank you, and we'll turn it over in the City Council Ordinance Committee can do their roll call.
Peg Crow, City Councilor.
Amanda Linehan, City Councilor, Ward 3.
Craig Spatafor, City Councilor at Large.
Steve Winslow, Ward 6 City Councilor.
Jadine Sika, Ward 8 City Councilor.
Thank you very much. The first item on our docket this evening is Council Paper 516/2022. I believe Councilor Crowe is the sponsor. Councilor Crowe, would you like to introduce the paper? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I jumped ahead. Sorry about that. Ken, can you read the notice opening the hearing?
The Malden Planning Board and the Malden City Council Ordinance Committee will jointly hold a public hearing in the Herbert L. Jackson Council Chamber, Malden City Hall, 215 Pleasant Street, Malden, Mass. at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, January 11th, 2023, in accordance with Title 12, Chapter 32, Section 050 of the Code of the City of Malden, regarding the petition for the zoning amendment proposed in City Council Paper 516/2022 to further amend the following section of Title 12 of the Code of the City of Malden as follows. 1. Use regulations, Section 12.12.300, to amend the use regulations for inclusionary zoning regarding alternative methods of compliance, fractional units, City Council Paper 516 of 2022. Full text of the proposed zoning amendment, City Council Paper 516/2022, is available for public review on the City of Malden website.
Thank you, Ken. Councilor Crowe, if you'd like to introduce the paper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, as you know, we have inclusionary zoning, and now that we have some developments that are going to be falling under the inclusionary zoning, we found one spot that we really need to address, and it is the alternative methods of compliance. And in the packets that you have in the ordinance on page 2 of 4, if you look at the number 3, the fractional use, it's we're required the number of affordable units results in a fraction of the unit. The required number is rounded down to the nearest whole, and the difference shall be realized in cash payment to the Affordable Housing Trust. What we've realized in, I think, in Michelle Romero's planning report and recommendations, that illustrative example is if there is a 24-unit inclusionary zoning, it results in 3.6. So the way the ordinance reads right now is they'd round down and pay the 0.6 to the Affordable Housing Trust. However, it only allows to round down. So if someone wanted to do 5 inclusionary zone units in that 24, they still have to pay the fractional. So it doesn't allow you to round up. It only allows you to round down and then pay. So what we want to do is have it either or. So in the example that is in the report, if they wanted to do 4 units, they wouldn't be paying into the Affordable Housing Trust. If they wanted to do the 3, they'd pay the 0.6.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the counselor? Eric McCush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Why not just have them round it up anyways? So if they were, instead of the 3.6, making it 3, make it 4.
I think that's sort of the percentage, so it's a percentage method, and so it results in sometimes in a fractional thing. I think Michelle can, or actually Nelson, we've had this conversation, could probably explain.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to give the developer the option. They can either do that portion as a payment in lieu, or they can create the additional affordable housing unit. I think when we did the feasibility study, and as you all recall, this ordinance was preceded by a feasibility study so that we could make sure the economics of the ordinance worked for the developer. And that would make sure we would not be subject to challenge, or if we were challenged, it would be upheld, our ordinance. So I think that was a policy decision related to the finances and also related to it being a policy decision that we did not want to round up. That certainly would be an option, but that would be up to the city council to, if you want to make that recommendation, you could. But I think there was a reason it was left as rounding down, and again, I believe that reason was to do with the financial feasibility and also as a policy decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and one of the counselors wanted to speak?
Yeah, no, so I served on the Affordable Housing Trust and the committee that did helped oversee the economic analysis. So it was very important to come up with the right percentage. And so, like, if you had a development that was maybe 1 unit over our minimum, that means, if you round it up, you'll go from 0.1 up to 1. It could really throw off the economics of the smaller developments. So every unit we can get is great. So I think this is creates a great balance that we get some funding for the Affordable Housing Trust if we have to have a partial unit, but it's also an incentive. I think there is one development right now that might be almost 100% affordable housing. So they don't have to pay a fraction because they're doing 100%. So I think it's an incentive to get more units built. So this is a good balance that we're not inhibiting development, but it does reward people who decide to build units. So I think it's a good balance. Thanks.
Counselor, when you were looking at that on that committee, did it ever come up that we might want to have a pool of cash available for, let's say it was to purchase a property or, provide improvements or anything like that? Did that ever come up in any of your discussions on that?
Yeah, that's why, the council has established an affordable housing trust. And so this money goes into that trust. We will also be getting community preservation money. So that way, there is money to help encourage other affordable housing. So we do have an affordable housing trust that that's where this money will go.
So there'll be other streams that will
So there'll be
provide
other
ready
streams
cash should we ever
Yeah,
need it.
but we are, it's much, some communities, when they set up inclusionary zoning, they allowed people to pay 100%. You can either do the units or pay 100%, but having the units is a lot more important because it's hard to get units to be built. So it's much more important to actually get the units built. And, this is a fractional thing, is just making sure we get some money to the trust that when it's, kind of that middling thing. So, but then this sort of does deal with that situation where we already at least have one application where people are already intending to do almost 100%. So why should that developer have to pay into the trust when they're already doing 100%? So I think we're trying to, realize that. So Michelle and Nelson might know about that, but yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Spatafora.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chairman, so just to piggyback off of what Council Winslow said, we both served on that committee, and there was a lot of studies done with other communities, and it was really a balance, because at one time I thought it'd be better off to get the money, but then after talking through that on the committee, quickly realized that you do want to have some income for the ability to have the alternative to purchase property or enhance other properties. But what was quickly told to us was oftentimes first of all, we want the units. And B, it's more expensive for the city to develop property than it would be a private developer. So you really got to kind of find that balance, because some cities put a high threshold where they want the cash, but it's hard to deploy it, and we've realized that even with ARPA funds. So I think this is a good midway point where we're getting the units, and if there is the ability for the developer that may not want to build that 0.3 or 0.2, they can give us the cash, which helps offset some other potential projects. Thank you.
Plus, the city's not in the business of building.
Correct,
and-
correct.
Okay, thank you. Eric Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of, first question, I think, is, I see you said that what is the current fee in lieu of value?
It has gone up already, so it's more than 300,000. It's adjusted annually on July 1st. And I don't know where that has been published. Give me just 1 minute. I know we had this discussion because we were working with a development that's going to be filing soon, and they were asking for that. The Office of Strategic Planning is the one that has been maintaining that number. It's based on the Consumer Price Index, Housing Index. So it says the city updates and publishes it. I don't know, I can try to get that for you. If you want to continue on, I can try to get
Yes, I appreciate that, Michelle. I appreciate
question
the,
answered.
in
Unless someone else here knows what it is. I know it's over 300,000, I just don't have it.
It's got to be about 315, 320,000, Eric, because it's only been 1 year, and it's based on the Cambridge Area Housing Consumer Price Index,
Okay.
which was about 5% last year. So,
okay, that's fair enough. Thank you.
but we can get you that. We'll get you that information at some point.
Thank you. I did have another question or two, and as it relates to CPC involvement in this process. Council Winslow, you mentioned that you or the city is going to be receiving CPC funds. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the Office of Strategic and Planning Community Developments has, the housing unit there. I mean, they have developed a proposal. I believe they submitted a grant application or are going to, and there are some discussions. I mean, the Community Preservation Act has money that has to be dedicated to affordable housing. So the thought is that, the expertise now in the city for affordable housing is going to, would rely on the trust in that way. The trust gets some money, like the J development. We dedicated this. The council dedicated a lot of money, so I think the trust has somewhere over $600,000, and so it is trying to add additional money to the trust to, as maybe a development can apply for funds. So in other communities, they, I know Somerville, in other communities they actually take all the 10% of CPC funds that's dedicated to housing, and every year they just put that into the Affordable Housing Trust. So I know, the housing, section of Office of Strategic and Planning Community Development's been discussing that, and I thought they actually had put in an application, but I don't know if it's been. I think isn't there a hearing coming up? I think there is a hearing coming up on housing for the CPC. This month, there's a hearing on that application, I believe, coming up, so, yeah.
Yeah, something a little bit about that. For full disclosure, as a member of this body, I also sit on the Community Preservation Committee as well. So, Yeah, so you said that the city is not in the business of, you know, of building or constructing houses and things of this nature. So, and it seems that you're mentioning the community preservation, is the Affordable Housing Trust fall underneath this community preservation? I mean, yeah, somewhat. Help me with the acronyms. I apologize.
So, you know, we have an affordable housing trust and setting it up, as we were setting it up, I mean, there's some affordable housing trusts that actually build and manage developments like a housing authority. We made the conscious decision that that affordable housing trust is just going to make decisions about funding other things, like the Asian Community Development Corporation is an applicant and planning to do affordable housing, and that's typical. You know, Somerville Community Corporation does that, North Shore Community Development Corporation. So a lot of housing trust will, you know, because affordable housing, you get some state and federal money, you can get local money. So it's a whole mix of money that goes into development. So, it's more than we can really build. So I think it's trying to leverage our money and work with people who are coming in with that. But it takes a lot more money than we will get initially. So, so this trust helps leverage other things. But yeah, generally the decision of the trust is not going to build and hold property. The trust will work with like community development corporations who do that and specialize in that. So.
Can I also
Okay.
chime in really quick?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I spoke to Debbie Burke not too long ago because I have a couple of parcels in Ward 8 that are on the foreclosure list, and I think they're developing this list of foreclosed homes in the city, and I think that might be what they're coming in front of the CPC for a grant, because we are not in the business of being landlords or things like that. So when I discussed it with Debbie, I think they're looking to purchase these houses and then offer them to an affordable home ownership for some of our residents. So I think that might be a little bit better answer to your question, because you had asked what the CPC funds were going to be used for, and I think, you know, it's been about a year that they've been going over. Am I correct to say this, Nelson? It's been longer than a year. I've been involved for the past year because there has been a couple of parcels.
If you don't mind, I can jump in and piggyback.
Absolutely.
It's difficult, it's definitely difficult to pull together a funding stack, but to answer Mr. Henry's question a little bit, so I chair the committee that is programming our ARPA funds on affordable housing, and this program falls under that bucket. So what we would hope to do is take the list of foreclosed and vacant homes. We don't want to evict anybody, but basically try to, you know, play ball with some of the folks that own these homes that are keeping them vacant, bring some of that federal money that's flowing through the city to the table to be able to make a deal where we could acquire it, rehabilitate it, and then partner with a CDC or nonprofit or someone who would help us actually make that affordable home ownership opportunity, but get us out of the transaction. So we're not owning the home, we're not, you know, we're not the lender, but we're partnering with folks who do that and leveraging the federal dollars, and the CPC could certainly come into play there. I don't think for this particular project, really, the challenge has been getting properties that we can work with. It's hard to get in touch with folks. It's hard to make a deal in this market. So there's a lot of hurdles, but another example might actually be the development in Councilor Crow's ward, where we are taking that ARPA money and partnering with the Asian Community Development Corporation to build affordable, probably rentals. We don't really 100% know yet, right? But rentals, okay. So that's a different, slightly different model where we're using some of those federal dollars. We could bring in CPC dollars in a situation like that as well, but you would partner with a CDC so that the city is doing one portion, a nonprofit's doing another, and when we have money in the trust that we can bring to the table, it sometimes can help you be more competitive on the open market. I know sometimes there's properties that come up that we know are gonna get scooped up, and they're maybe a small apartment building that you'd like to acquire. This would give us the money to be able to actually do that and not let it, you know, sell, have everybody get evicted, and then the rents double, that sort of scenario. So that's just a few examples of how it could be deployed and how we're trying to deploy it. I hope that helps.
It all helps. Thank you.
You all set, Eric?
I suppose so. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, you had some information to clarify, and then Ken Antonucci.
Yes, I did receive the information from Building Commissioner Nelson Miller, who had received it from the Office of Strategic Planning. The current amount is $320,000. That's this year's amount. And I also did just want to add, I was also on the committee with Council Spatafora and Council Winslow, and back to the chair's question, it definitely was contemplated, we wanted to, as the council said, we wanted to have both a fund with money in it, and we wanted to have the option of creating the affordable housing units. As one of the councils said, some cities do one or the other. We definitely wanted to have both options. And that's why both were put into the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Ken Antonucci.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I was just curious, so the $320,000 in lieu of payment or the fraction of, does that go into, where does that money go? Does that go into the
That-
Affordable Trust?
That goes into the Affordable Housing Trust.
So that goes into that same
Fund.
trust fund?
Right, and,
Okay.
and the chair, if I will just quickly note, the chair, as you know, last year, when you heard your first case under the IZ, the chair had asked me, our staff, to put together a binder with all the affordable housing, inclusionary zoning materials, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund charter, the sources of funding, accountings, how much money is in which account where, et cetera, the ordinances. I had previously given it to you piecemeal. The chair had asked for it to be compiled into one binder, and we will be handing those out. So that is coming to you. So you'll have all the information in one location for you to review what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is, what the ordinance is, what these different streams of income and sources of income are.
Okay. And so in addition to that, I mean, I know Councilor Wenzel brought it up, and as far as the CPA funding, I mean, that can be applied for, say, by the, Office of Strategic Planning for specific projects, but it is actually allowed to apply for money to put into the Affordable Housing Trust as well.
Yes. There's a percentage, that's correct. And we'll be giving you that info as part of this binder as well, what the
I just-
current amount is dedicated for housing in the CPA account.
I just wanted to confirm that and get that on the record. It can be either or.
Okay, you all set, Ken? Yes. Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions for the sponsor of the paper? Eric Henry.
Thank you, Chair, for the second time. Understanding that councils may not have, may have only a passive expertise in this area. So on the Affordable Housing Trust, how many members make up this trust? And what are their levels of expertise?
Do you want me to get, if I could just quickly interrupt, I have the document, do you want me to get that and read from it, or do the counselors have that? Do you know?
Just off the top of my head, there's 7. The mayor, the council representative, I was that, now it's Councilor Simonelli. Angie Liu, who's with Asian Community Development Corporation. Brian Slater with one of the local banks. Steve Friend from the Housing Authority, and a resident, and Roxanne, who's also works in housing. So, and the trust is set up that there are requirements for specific expertise, and it is unusual. The other thing is, like, some of the people on the trust are actually live outside the city. A lot of times, people on the planning board have to be city residents because we want that expertise. The housing trust is set up so that the expertise is, if you have the expertise, you don't have to live in the city. So it's a mix. Like I say, the mayor's the chair. There's a council representative, and then there's, I think, five other people. So with expertise.
Do you know of any communities that have affordable housing trusts or entities of this nature that also have members of their CPC or CPA on this trust board?
I am not aware. I mean, I wrote the trust document and, found, sort of there was a standard affordable housing trust document from various cities. So, and, there is kind of the state, housing, urban development division that we got some information. So I'm not familiar. I know, like, my most familiarity is like, you know, communities that have affordable housing trusts that have been around longer, as well as the community preservation funding, like Somerville. They actually, like I say, dedicate every year their CPA funds to housing just right to the affordable housing trust. So that's just, I don't know if in fact then they have a CPC member on that. I mean, you already have two boards you're on, right? You don't want to be on a third one?
Yeah, that did not mean that I was volunteering again. I was in the Navy, never again volunteer yourself. But
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Like I said,
I would just thank you for that, and also say that there are, in my understanding, there are a number of possibilities and options that can be utilized and explored with regards to affordable housing trust and CPC involvement,
Right,
CPA involvement.
yeah.
And with that, I'll yield.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I would like to just mention to the councilors, don't feel compelled to turn around and you have to talk to us. I meant to jump in earlier. I personally would prefer if you just spoke to the audience.
Okay.
We will not be offended that you're not turning around and looking right at us. So, you know, it's just sort of let you guys know that you don't have to observe courtesy and protocol.
Since it's probably me that you're talking about, I need to read your lips. So I have a little bit of a hearing issue going on, so I need to turn around to talk to you so I can see what you're saying
That's
to me.
fine. That-
So I apologize, but that's why I'm sideways, because even though Eric's sitting right here, I can barely hear what
Yeah.
he's saying.
Well, that's
So-
fine. Just don't
and
feel
I can't get into
compelled
the
that you
doctor
have
till
to.
May.
Don't feel compelled that you have to turn around. Are there any other questions for the sponsor of the paper or Michelle? Do the councilors have any other words they'd like to share? No? Okay, well, at this point then, we would like to entertain from the public, anyone who would like to speak in favor of this council paper. Feel free to come up to the podium. We ask that you sign the clipboard with your name and address for the record, and we just ask that you speak into the microphone. So if there was anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor, feel free to come up now. Michelle, do you have anything to read in favor?
No.
Okay, seeing and hearing no one that wants to speak in favor, declare that part of the hearing closed. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to Council Paper 516? Michelle, do you have anything to read in opposition?
No.
Very good. Seeing and hearing no one in opposition, declare that part of the hearing closed. Michelle, do you have anything in general to say? Or to read?
No. I'll go with no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, unless the councilors have something they'd like to say, I'd ask Michelle to read her staff recommendation
Thank
and
you.
report.
So this is a planning report and recommendation dated January 11th, 2023. It's incorporated herein by reference. I won't read everything verbatim. You all have a copy of the proposed paper 516 of 2022. You also have a copy of the ordinance, which is Title 12.12.300. So you have the full ordinance. The purpose and intent we've heard about, it's to encourage the creation of more affordable housing units. Given you a description here, which is taken right from the paper, which shows you what language would be deleted in the current provision and what language would be added. I will note that per the express language of the ordinance, all provisions of the inclusionary zone ordinance are use regulations, and there shall be no variance of any provision. So this proposed amendment, as well as the rest of the entire inclusionary, if this is ordained, if this moves forward, as well as the rest of the ordinance, there could be no variance of this sought. We've already, Council Crowe went through the example. In terms of application and exemptions, this amendment would apply to new construction, new use and occupancy of existing buildings, unless exempt by state law, local ordinance, or the express language of the amendment, or is the subject of a building permit or special permit issued before the first publication of the notice of the public hearing, which was December 23rd, 2022. There is one project exempt from the proposed amendment. There has been the issuance of the special permit prior to the date of first publication. That is for the 9092 Salem Street project. The special permit was granted by this board on May 11th, 2022. Per statute, applications for permits that are in the processing stage when publication occurs are not protected. However, historically, the city interprets, in consideration of the petitioner's good faith reliance on the current regs, that the proposed amendment would not apply to applications filed prior to the first publication of the notice of public hearing. Again, that was that December 23rd, 2022 date. There are no complete applications in the processing stage. I want to just note, again, there's nothing complete. The city has been working with several different developers, so there are several projects in what we would call the planning and pre-permitting stages, but no applications have been filed. So wanted to give you that info. In terms of the effective date of the amendment is the date of the City Council's vote to ordain the amendment. The council must act on the amendment within 90 days after the public hearing closes, otherwise a new public hearing would need to be held. So if the hearing closes tonight, January 11, 2023, the final date for action is April 11, 2023. Standard of review, the planning board's review and recommendation of the proposed zoning change should be directed by substantive planning objectives, community need, and general welfare. As we heard discussed, this amendment does serve to address impacts of the current provision that were not fully understood or contemplated prior to the actual application and administration of the ordinance. One, the current provision does not encourage the creation of the additional affordable housing unit. The current provision does not take into account the creation of additional affordable housing units by proposals that create more than the required number, including those that will provide as much as 100% affordable. So the amendment is supported by community need to create more affordable housing. The planning recommendation, which was made prior to the public hearings, that the planning board recommends to the city council approval of the proposed amendment of section 12.12.300G. You are here to make an advisory recommendation to the city council. City council will receive that recommendation and then move forward and decide whether or not to amend the ordinance. So again, this is just an advisory recommendation you will be making.
Thank you, Michelle. Does anyone have any questions on Michelle's report or recommendation? Does anyone on the council have any questions? No? If that's the case, is there a motion? Ken Antonucci.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the planning's recommendation for approval.
Okay, and Eric McCush.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Ken's made a motion to approve the recommendation from the planning staff and to the city council.
So to
and
recommend approval.
recommend approval, and Eric McCush has seconded.
Ken Antonucci?
Yes.
Hold on one second.
sorry.
Let me finish my. Okay, so we got, okay, go ahead.
Ken Antonucci?
Yes.
Diane Chuha?
Yes.
Tawadej Geber Selassie?
Yes.
Risa Gray?
Yes.
Patrick Hayes?
Yes.
Eric Henry?
Yes.
Eric McCush?
Yes.
Henry Susi?
Yes.
Chuck Ioven?
Yes. So the planning board will make an advisory recommendation to the city council to approve council paper 516/2022. Thank you very much. And Councilor Spatafora.
I'll make a motion for the ordinance committee to adjourn.
Second.
Go. Yeah, go ahead.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you very much, councilors. Have a good evening and Happy New Year. Thank you. The next order of business will be Highland Avenue, no number. Ken, can you read the notice, please?
The Malden Planning Board will hold a public hearing in the Herbert L. Jackson Council Chamber, Malden City Hall, 215 Pleasant Street, Malden, Mass., at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, January 11th, 2023, tabled on December 14th, 2022, on the petition of Anthony Centrella, trustee of 62 through 64 Street Realty Trust, permit application number RES 047277-2022, seeking a special permit under Title 12, Chapter 28, Section 130 of the Code of the City of Malden, to allow ledge removal and alteration of grade to prepare the property to construct a single-family dwelling at the property known as, and numbered, Highland Avenue, no number, Malden, Mass., and also known by City Assessors Parcel ID number 002-014-447, and for reference, located between the properties known and numbered 695 Highland Avenue and 705 Highland Avenue.
Thank you very much, Ken. Is the petitioner present?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thomas Callahan with the law offices at 1 Center Street here in Malden. I'm representing Tony Centrella and the 6264 Street Realty Trust. With me this evening is Tony Centrella to my far left. He's also going to be excavating the ledge at the premises, assuming that we get a special permit granted here tonight. Also with me is Rick Salvo, our engineer from Engineering Alliance, and Rick Roll, our geologist and seismologist. And Rick Salvo and Rick Roll will be making a more technical and detailed short presentation after my introduction. We are petitioning the Planning Board for a special permit to remove the ledge utilizing a hydraulic hammer with pre-drilling as necessary to assist and facilitate the hammering. At 695A, we call it, I think it's been called several other numbers, but in terms of the legal advertisement, but it's 695 Highland Ave. The premises has 7,800 square feet for a lot. We expect the excavation to take approximately 3 weeks. Also, we expect that there'll be approximately 50 truckloads of material to leave the site, that is the broken up rock and ledge. I think we had neglected to provide that information previously. But that's our expectation based on what we have out there. Rick Roll, our geologist, has opined that the rock is fractured and will be, I hate to use the term somewhat easily removed, but we believe that the rock is susceptible, very susceptible to removal for several reasons. First of all, the ledge is highly exposed to the elements, that is not covered by dirt, which would protect the rock from the elements, but rather the rock that we will be excavating is largely completely exposed to the elements. Also, the rock is already fractured in some areas, which is going to assist us. And thirdly, there are a number of tree root systems surrounding the rock, which we believe will be deteriorating the rock and the ledge already, so that all those factors will, we believe, help in making the process easier, let me say. If the board grants this special permit for excavation and ledge removal, we intend to construct a single-family home which will conform to all of the zoning provisions and controls. Therefore, I just suggest to you that we are here tonight seeking the ledge removal permit, not a single-family permit, since that will be done as a matter of right if the ledge removal permit is granted. We met with a number of neighbors this past June, including Councilor Linehan, to review the plans and obtain input. My office sent out approximately 100 invitations, which roughly conform to a 500-foot radius around the site. The meeting was productive, and I expect some of the neighbors are here again tonight. Mr. Centrella, again, who's going to be doing the excavating, is an experienced excavator. He recently successfully removed very similar ledge on Mitchell Ave, which is in Medford, which is off of Fulton Street. And based on my calculations, as the crow flies, it's approximately 2,500 feet from our site here. And again, Mr. Grohl worked on that as well, and the rock is very similar, and that took, it was a larger project in terms of more, there was more rock to be removed, but that took approximately 3 weeks. That's why we do not expect the removal at this site to take more than 3 weeks. We've had the opportunity to review the city planner's report and recommendations, and there's two recommendations which we'd like to discuss with the board. First of all is the recommendation on hours. The recommendation stated that the hours of operation should be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I point out to the board that the city ordinance has specifically cites excavation and sound-producing equipment, limiting hours for that work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. While we're not suggesting a 7 a.m. start, we would respectfully request that the board consider an 8 a.m. start to the project, which again is well within the limits. So it would be 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, which is well within the limits of the city ordinance for this type of work. This would help us move the project along, because we heard from the neighbors at the meeting that they want to see this work accomplished as quickly as possible. And the neighbors were also hoping that it was going to be done during the winter months when windows are closed and the outdoor activity is somewhat limited. So this would help us in expediting the removal. Also, the 9 a.m. start is really contrary to construction norms. That is, construction folks for the subcontractors that we're going to need expect to be working earlier than 9 a.m. and it would pose difficulty to us to start at 9 a.m. Secondly, the recommendation by the city planner was that the area for video and photo surveillance or surveys for the pre-ledge removal be expanded to 500 feet. The city zoning ordinance, in fact, it's the zoning ordinance. Before I referred to as a city ordinance, but here I'm referring on the hours, but here I'm referring to the actual zoning ordinance, calls for 300 feet. The change from 500 feet to 300 feet would basically double the amount of homes we would have to survey prior to the ledge removal, which is a tremendous hardship. But further, I don't think it accomplishes anything. I think Mr. Grohl will speak to the fact that beyond 150 feet, there's no discernible perception of vibration. for this hammering. So the 300 feet quite adequately deals with the potential for damage. We don't believe there'll be any damage, but the potential for any sort of claim or damage. But to increase it to 500 feet would be, would just impose a tremendous economic hardship on us. So with that, I'm going to conclude my introduction. I'm happy to answer any questions now, or if, I don't know if the chair would prefer to have our engineer and our geologist make their presentations.
Yes, they can make the presentation, and then we'll circle back with questions, because I actually have some questions with regard to the starting time and
Okay.
the expansion to 500 feet.
Sure.
So,
Okay. So I'll
thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Rick Salvo to come up.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, office at 194 Central Street in Saugus, Mass. I think everyone's pretty familiar with the site, but just to kind of back up a step here, Fellsway East and Highland Ave intersection is over here. The site's the vacant parcel, partway up from the Fellsway East intersection. The lot's comprised of 7,750 square feet, has 77 and a half feet of frontage on Highland Avenue. I think everyone's pretty familiar with the topography here. There's a steep slope that extends up from the back of the sidewalk, which is about a little less than elevation 110, extends up to about elevation 145 at the very rear of the zoning envelope here. So there's about a 35-foot grade change across the site. The proposal and the grading scheme that you see here was designed basically around the zoning ordinance to meet the required setbacks, open space, height, dimensional requirements, and that sort of thing. The proposed dwelling has a footprint about 1,250 square feet, and it's been designed to kind of fit into the topography. Rather than trying to create a flat lot, we're proposing to fit it into the topography. So in order to demonstrate that, we've cut sort of a cross-section through the site, which I'll show on the next page here. Highland Ave is over here. This brown line that you see represents the existing ground as it exists today. So the garage will be built into this site. And then the next level will be stepped up on top of the garage, and the next level will be stepped up on top of that, such that at the rear of the dwelling, you would walk out at the second floor elevation. The reason why we chose a design like that was to minimize the amount of excavation, kind of fit this house into the hillside rather than bucking the grade. What that does is, A, it makes it fit in a little bit better, makes it a little bit more economical to build. Economical to build also has a direct correlation to impact and has less impact on the hillside, the excavation, and so on and so forth. There's about 1,200 cubic yards of excavation proposed. The green area that you see is the area that'll be disturbed. Everything around the green area will remain completely undisturbed. This house won't be seen from the area in the back, because it'll be lower than the grade in the area behind it. And it actually leaves a pretty good buffer of about 46 feet from the back of the house to the rear property line. Stormwater is handled in a couple of different ways here. If we go back to this elevation here, you can see stormwater generally flows straight down that steep slope. Obviously, there's no mitigation there now, but for the ground cover that exists over the ledge outcroppings. With the ledge outcroppings that are there, there's a relatively high rate of stormwater runoff in the current condition. In the post-development condition, we'll create flat terraced areas that will provide opportunity for stormwater that runs over that slope to hit those flat areas. It'll lower the times of concentration and allow for some infiltration into those loamed and seeded areas, We've also, and we've had success doing this on other projects in the city, we took the area under the stairway that'll be utilized to get up to the first floor, which creates a very large void. That area will be filled with stone and used as kind of a holding area to infiltrate all the roof runoff into. Will be held there. There's quite a bit of overburden there, less ledge in the front, so it'll allow us to infiltrate the stormwater for the roof in that area there. So overall, and we've submitted the calculations to your engineering department, had some comments from them which we recently addressed that demonstrates that overall there's a net decrease in the rate of stormwater runoff. Stormwater runoff generally flows, straight towards Highland Ave, as that's how the topography is depicted. Like I said, a combination of the terracing and this large infiltration area in the front basically reduces the net runoff in cubic feet per second, as well as the overall volume of stormwater runoff. The utility connections are pretty straightforward. Water and sewer is right in the street, so we'll connect in traditional manners to the dwelling. And that's essentially, I think, the way the site lays out. So I think I'll turn it over to Mr. Grohl to talk about the rock excavation and how that'll be accomplished, and be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Richard J. Grohl. My company is Richard J. Grohl Technical Services. I'm out of Hollis, New Hampshire. And I am an industrial seismologist specialized in measurement of vibration from blasting and other construction operations. I have examined the site, the rock at the site, the plans for the excavation of the rock, and also have experience with other sites in the area and the same rock. And what I have discovered is that the material here is rhyolite. It's a Malden volcanic complex. It's volcanic ash that's been recrystallized over many millions of years. The rock itself is relatively soft in bulk because it's highly fractured. You would not know it by looking at it from the street, but when you actually begin to expose it and pull away the loose material, what you'll find is that it is entrained with a myriad of fractures that bound cubes that are anywhere from about half a cubic foot up to 2 cubic feet across. And the material, it continues to split smaller and smaller even within those natural fractures if you are to act on it with a hammer. What we're proposing is to use a hydraulic breaker which is mounted to the arm of an excavator. The excavator is a track machine. It's one of the more common machines that you see working on construction sites in the area. They're usually painted yellow or orange, and those can range in size from very small, like mini excavators that have rubber tracks that you can drive down the street, up to machines that have to be transported in multiple pieces because they won't fit onto a single flatbed. What we're proposing using to start the project would be a moderately sized excavator. This would be brought in so that we can be ensured that they don't have any limitations, size limitations, getting the machine into the site so that they can position it in a location that is of maximum mechanical advantage. It's very important, excuse me, that the machine be set in such a way that it provides maximum resistance to the force that's being applied to the rock for the machine itself, so that it doesn't slip. Excuse me. The breaker that is mounted to the machine is run off the hydraulics of the machine. These breakers range in size from very small, almost the size of a jackhammer, up to the size of the arm of the machine itself, and they can weigh up to 10,000 to 15,000 pounds. In this case, we would be looking at starting with a machine that has what's known as a 3,500 foot-pound class hammer, and it would be attached to something like a 200 or 300 class excavator, which is a relatively small excavator to start. And once the site is explored, where we've got initial entrance in and we've established a staging place for the machine to sit within the site, maybe we would bring in a larger machine later to expedite the breakage of the rock. These machines work by just pulverizing rock in advance of the tip of a bit that is repeatedly or repetitively actuated by the hydraulics of the system. And the repetitions that are produced from the machine are actually what produce the predominant ground vibration frequency that we would measure from the machine's operation. The level of vibration that is produced in this kind of rock from the kind of machine that we're proposing to use would not exceed 0.375 inch per second at a distance of 11 feet. And that's something that I have repeatedly and regularly confirmed on other sites, most recently just last week in Natick, same kind of rock. They had a machine that was working 15 feet from the home, and the maximum peak particle velocities were 0.24 inch per second, which is what we project the maximum peak particle velocity from the example that was used in the report of 0.235 inch per second at a distance of 15 feet, which is the closest structure, 705 Highland Avenue. With greater and greater distance, vibration drops off exponentially because you're taking a unit of energy and you're dispersing it over a concentric plane within the mass of the Earth. So when you get a doubling of distance from the hammer bit from 15 to 30 feet, the expected vibration that we would have would be 0.08 inch per second, and at 60 feet it would be 0.025 inch per second, and so on and so forth, to the point where at about 150 feet or 140 feet we would be at 0.008 inch per second. The human body can perceive particle velocities as low as 0.007 inch per second from static or steady state vibration. These are impulsive vibrations, so therefore you would probably not be able to feel them at 140 feet, and if it was from a static, like a motor running, producing that level, you would just barely be able to distinguish it. So as far as going any further out to measure, you would not be able to get a reading on a seismograph because the natural trigger threshold, the lowest trigger threshold for the seismic monitoring instrumentation is around the threshold for human perception, which is 0.01 inch per second. In short, outside of 150 feet around the circumference of the working hammer, you'd be able to hear it, but you would not be able to feel the vibration. And it would be immeasurable at double that distance. As far as the modification of the site and taking rock away from the site, being that the site is by and large currently rock, exposed rock, it has a very high potential for runoff as it stands right now. The design that is proposed for the site will actually cause less water to run off of the site after development is completed than is current, because they'll be capturing it at both terrace levels and in roof runoff and drainage. And as far as disposal of the rock is simply pulverized, loaded into a truck and hauled away. It's a fairly tight little area that you can work in with a truck, a breaker, and a loader. And the breaker and loader, or breaker and bucket on the excavator can be exchanged so that they can load whatever they've broken and then put the hammer back, break more, or they can put two machines on the same site and break and dig at the same time. But again, to start, we would be working with a moderately sized hammer, moderately sized excavator, and the vibrations that would be produced by it would not be perceptible more than 140 feet from the work site.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Grohl since he's up here? Ken Antonucci. Whoop, sorry, I just clicked you off. There you go.
Good evening, Mr. Grohl. I'm not sure if you would answer this or Mr. Centrella would, but you said Mr. Centrella would be doing performing the actual hole ramming and demolition?
Yes.
And I know you've referenced, a range of different machines and everything, and hammer sizes. I know you're giving a range here, and you're starting small and possibly want to go larger. What size machine does Mrs. Centrella actually have that you think you'd be using at first? A 150? Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, that's not that big, so that's good. And then that would have a 3,500-pound hammer on it? Okay, so do you think you'd be using the single, I know we referenced.
I'm sorry, do you have a lot of questions for Mr. Centrella? If so, Mr. Centrella should come up and give his name and address for the record.
Good evening, my name's Anthony Centrella, 34 Woodruff Ave, Medford.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, so it'd be a PC 150.
So basically, I'd like to just use a medium-sized excavator with approximately 3,500-pound hammer, possibly a 5,000-pound hammer, and hammer the rock and remove it. There's a possibility the machine might have a quick connect, so I only need one machine on site to remove the rock and hammer the rock.
Okay, well, at first, because it is such a tight site, you'd probably start off with the one machine anyways.
It is, it looks worse than it's going to be. It's not as overbearing as one would expect. The rock is, like Mr. Grohl said, it's a weathered rock. It should come out. Everything I've ever done in that area, the rock does remove. Once you hit it, it does bliss.
Yeah, it's fractured.
Yeah.
And then so as far as the truck, triax truck,
Well,
dump
yes,
truck?
We'll probably use a medium-sized truck there because at first, get the material out of there. Right now, presently, there's a swallow on the site.
Yeah, the left-hand side.
I'm gonna excavate that from all the overburden, the trees and all that stuff, which will give us enough room to be able to bring a medium-sized truck right in on-site and be able to load it from the excavator there.
Okay, good. So you'd be loading it hopefully on-site and not having to
Yes.
leave the truck
yes,
on the
there should
street?
be- Once I clean the overburden, there should be no problem why I can't put a medium-sized truck on site.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I actually have a couple, and I'm not sure who the best person is, so if you need to pass it around, that's fine. With regard to the equipment, you said you have the equipment already?
No, I'm gonna be renting it. What I have right now, I might not use. I might just rent a piece of equipment. That'll be easier for me to remove the rock.
Do you anticipate any delays, given the market and environment? Is there going to be any problem that might delay the completion of the project in the time frame that you've described?
Basically, I'd like to get it done as quick as possible. With, the economy, the way it's going, I'd like to get it done as quick as possible. And I don't foresee any delay as far as finances.
Oh, no, I was thinking more about the availability of the equipment.
Oh, it's available. It's available.
Okay, so there shouldn't be any
I
problem.
confirmed it today. I could have the equipment there within a week, if, reasonably.
Okay, in the whole project, we heard that the excavation portion and the removal will take 3 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks for me to break it up and remove it.
And then how long do you think it'll take to erect the structure?
Approximately 4 months. From the time I remove it to the time I build it for occupancy, it should be about 4 months.
Okay. Can you describe for me the staging? You said And I trust Ken, so he seemed satisfied with it. I walked the lot and I'm trying to figure out how are you gonna get staging on the lot, real quickly?
Well, basically, right now, the way I plan on attacking it with the excavator is, where the swallow is, where the trees are,
Yeah,
there's a lot of overburden right there. I'm gonna crawl the machine, right, I'm gonna maybe bring in maybe a load of stone and put it where the trees are now. I'm gonna crawl the machine up there, I'm gonna go up the incline and basically start bearing to my right so I'm on top of the egg. And from there, I'm gonna work my way down. It's, it looks scary, but it really isn't.
and there won't be any impact to the sidewalk in front? You're gonna be able to do everything on your
Yes,
property?
and if there's any impact on the sidewalk, the only area I'm gonna use to bring the machine up on the sidewalk is the area that I'm gonna eventually be replacing, to bring the utilities in. So basically, if I crack the sidewalk or damage it by any means, it's gonna be replaced eventually anyways.
Okay, no, I was just trying to visualize it, you know, and people who might be walking up and down that area and just how you were gonna stage the excavation and then the building of the structure.
Well, safety is of the most important issue, of course. And I'm,
Will you be putting up like those orange fences for any runoff from the side of the hill, or?
I think, Mr. Chairman, Jersey barriers will go up along the property line
which are the concrete barriers.
Okay, yep,
to protect the street, the sidewalk, and with the fence, there'd be Jersey barriers.
And a fence.
okay. Okay, the only other questions I have, first with the water runoff. I understand that it's a lot of rock there right now and it's pretty impervious, and having read the reports and things like that. So the improvement will be by digging out the ledge and then putting in loam and sand or gravel or whatever. That's gonna help mitigate the runoff. How much loam will be there, and how much runoff do you think that will accommodate?
So the runoff is basically controlled in basically three different ways here, right? Right now, like I said, if you go back to this cross-section here and you follow the brown line, there's just a continuous slope that the stormwater now runs across. In the post-development condition, it runs down the slope on the side and then it hits this flat spot. That flat spot will have about 4 to 6 inches of loam in there with seed on top of it. It'll slow the time of concentration that it takes. It won't be going down the slope anymore. It'll be hitting a flat area now. It'll give it a lot more opportunity to infiltrate. It's unlikely, I think, that anything that hits that flat area there would ever make its way to the front. It would certainly be less than what is going there today. The second thing that we're doing is we're taking the large void that's under the stairs, which is in a fill section right now. And that's the area of the site that has the most amount of overburden right now. So it's got the most propensity for infiltration. That area will be built as a big void filled with washed stone, which will create sort of a detention facility that'll hold it. There's about 400 cubic feet of space in there, which would translate in about almost 4,000 gallons of water that would be able to be stored in that void.
Under the stairs.
Allow it to infiltrate. And keep in mind, the tributary watershed area is a roof that's about 1,200 square feet.
Okay, and now, do you have to take any special precautions, particularly up at the ledge, to protect the house? If this water's collecting in the loam, will it leach into the house? How do you protect that?
Yeah, I mean, like has been stated right along, this ledge is very fractured, so that storm water will find its way.
Within the
will
cracks
find its
of
way
the
into
remaining
cracks
rock?
of the remaining rock, sure. won't infiltrate as fast, but it will find its way in there.
Okay. Yeah, the only other comments I have, and I can wait if other people have any questions, regarding the council's request about the hours of operation. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay, do you want to ask Michelle? Go ahead. You can ask first, or Ken Antonucci, you?
Yeah, I still had a couple other quick ones.
Oh, did I cut in on you? I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Go
That's
ahead.
fine. Yeah, no, I actually apologize, the gentleman sat down. But obviously, we're just talking about the road, the ledge demolition and everything at this point. I mean, as you said, Counselor, this construction of the single-family home and everything, that's not part of this petition. But during the demolition and everything, I know you just mentioned that you'd probably have Jersey barriers on the back of sidewalk. You also have erosion controls, I'm sure, hay bales, wattles, whatever, to take care of any runoff, clean up any tracking off the site every day. And you had mentioned that where you're going to be bringing the vehicles or the excavator in and out, that's going to be where the eventual curb cut and utility locations are anyways. So that sidewalk will all be repaired. Okay. But
Yeah,
that would
we
be,
did submit an erosion control plan with the set. That does call for the hay bales along the site, as well as a stabilized construction.
but that's part of the
entrance.
construction permit, not
yeah.
the demolition.
No, it's part of this.
Part of the demolition, oh, yeah.
Submitted with this special permit.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
didn't have it
Yeah, you
here,
should-
that's all.
You should have it,
Yeah, I don't
Do
have
you
that in
want
the
to go
package.
through it? It's page 3 of the site plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the site plan. I don't have any of that in my package.
You don't have the plans?
No,
Yeah, you do. Those are the plans.
all I have is this. It's okay.
There we go.
Does anybody else not have the plans? They're highlighted. Make sure you look at them.
So we have the
One that's
stabilized
highlighted.
construction entrance down here, stone entrance, so take care of any of the mud tracking, and then hay bales along the side, the front, and the side. Either hay bales, straw wattles, whatever the city prefers.
This helps.
Does anybody
Thank
else
you.
need it? Just make sure you're looking at the revised set plans.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're all set, Ken?
Yes.
Michelle, you had some questions?
Yes, I'm not sure if they're for the engineer or the seismologist. You mentioned a couple times you'll probably use this size equipment, or you might start with that. You might have one truck, you might have 2 hammers or 2 machines. The report that Mr. Grohl submitted talks about a machine, but it doesn't really, I don't think it specifies, or at one point it specifies the size, so are all the findings and all the info that was provided, what does that go with? Does this go with 2 machines? When you say you won't feel the vibration, or you gave all those measurements, what size hammer, I mean, what does this report go with? What type of machine, and will it change if there are 2 machines on site, or a larger hammer, or a larger excavator, or, it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty with exactly what's gonna be used. Will it be the equipment he owns? Will he lease new equipment? What's the story with that?
Okay, the equipment that I referenced in the report was the machinery that was used that I measured. As far as what he is proposing to use, it will not be as large, at least to start, as the measured equipment. Now, as far as hammering, he's only going to be able to hammer with 1 machine at a time if he's obviously working by himself. Where I mentioned that he might have a second machine on site is either if he gets an operator to come in and load trucks while he hammers, and that would still just incorporate 1 hammer, Or if he were to use a larger hammer, actually, when you're hammering, using a larger hammer does not produce higher vibration. What it does is it makes the rock yield faster. And it actually, if anything, will only keep the vibrations at the same level or lower. But when you have a limitation where you've got to go in for the first time to establish a staging area for the machines to sit and for other things like trucks and other equipment to come in and personnel to come in to do things that are preliminary on the site, he proposes using a machine that would be substantially smaller than the one that we used as the example for the hammering that was done down in West Roxbury. Or not West Roxbury, I'm sorry, Brighton.
I'm sorry, so could you say that, you said it doesn't matter how large the hammer is, you're saying it's
No,
not going to
actually-
create more vibrations?
That's correct. What happens is the vibration is basically a dissipation of elastic waves in response to the rock being struck. If the rock yields, the energy is dissipated in the form of fragmentation and heave of the material. If the rock does not break, it's dissipated in the form of elastic waves. So that's why the vibrations do not change between a smaller hammer and a larger hammer. The smaller hammer has smaller force, but given that the rock has a highly fractured disposition, regardless of the size of the hammer, we feel that it will break readily. It will not produce an undue amount of resistance that would cause them to have to use alternative means to break the rock. Either way that they use a smaller hammer to start or move on to a larger hammer, the vibrations will not change.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. You just mentioned another one of my questions I had, these alternative methods. So you've only specified using a hydraulic drill. Potentially, you might need to do that. Is that correct? Or is there something else that you're talking about or proposing, or?
Well, actually, the hydraulic drill is sometimes employed if they encounter rock that is not yielding readily. What they'll do is they'll tenderize it by putting a number of holes on close centers within the part of the rock that they can't get to break. And the perforations produce both a weakening of the rock and also it gives the hammer tip a point which they can grab into the rock so the tip doesn't slip as they're hammering on it. But I doubt that you would need to use a drill on this site because the rock is highly fractured and relatively soft.
Yeah, because I saw in your report you mentioned they might need to use it, or they might elect to use it, but that's it. That's the only other means you're proposing.
That would be correct. That's would be a drill that would just come in. It's similar, that you may have seen them around. It's very similar to an excavator, but instead of having an arm with a bucket or a hammer on it, instead what it has is an arm with a drill shaft that rises and lowers, and the drill bit itself is hollow. The steel that holds it is hollow, and air is forced down in through the center of the steel. And as the bit rotates and pulverizes rock in advance of the tip, the air is forced down through the center of the bit and pushes the cuttings out, and then the cuttings are captured with a dust collection system.
Okay, thank you. And so nothing known as feather and wedge?
No.
And no chemical compounds?
Chemical compounds are off the table because there's a moratorium on the use of
Right, because of a
gravel.
bad accident. I think there was one in the city with a contractor using it. It wasn't this contractor, but,
No, it was,
well, I know we're prohibiting it, so I'm not sure about the moratorium you're talking about. But
yeah, no, but I warn people not to use it,
yeah,
and
Okay.
because it's, I don't think you're even allowed to use it in
yeah.
Massachusetts.
You're definitely not allowed to use it in Malden because of this accident on another site. So if you could, I think you were part of the project on Fellsway East?
Yes.
So could you just briefly explain, and my questions have to do with the concerns with what was proposed, the time limit that was proposed, what ended up happening with the equipment not being available. The length of time was proposed, I think, at 4 to 6 weeks, and it lasted more like 4 to 6 months. So could you just discuss how this is going to be different than that project?
Oh, yes.
And how we can get to the hours and some of those other issues that that particular project was plagued with. But could you just, in terms of the physical excavation, how this is different in how this 3 to 4 weeks is actually going to be the duration?
The feather and wedge is done by hand.
Yeah.
You have a technician who's first drilling a hole into the rock with a jackhammer, or a small drill drills the holes with a tracked excavator. Then the technician takes a jackhammer with what's known as a feather and wedge, which is a mandrel, a solid steel pin that is hooked directly into the jackhammer with two steel semi-circumferential sections of tubing around it. And the mandrel is tapered. And what you do is, it's hooked with wire levers to the mandrel. The feathers on the outside are, so that when you lift it, they drop down and they collect together so they'll fit in the hole. And then when you start running the jackhammer forces itself between the feathers and pushes them apart. This is done on a hand scale with a 150 to 200 pound man holding a 75-pound jackhammer.
Yeah, and I don't mean to cut you off. I'm aware of that. I just meant more of a briefer summary, because I know Mr. Centrella himself was out there jackhammering that site. I visited the site many, many times because of all the complaints. But I know that that's how it's done, but he had said there was gonna be a big equipment drilling all the holes. He ended up having to do it by hand. The machine wasn't available, so I guess I wanted you to just give a synopsis that you're not doing anything at all like that.
Nothing like that.
This is completely different, and so there's not gonna be any concern like that. This is not
Right. The hydraulic
a
breaker
manual
is-
project.
Right, the hydraulic breaker is substantially more efficient than a feather and wedge. A feather and wedge is an accommodation to the fears of people have without being aware of what different techniques might produce different effects to the surroundings. A hydraulic breaker produces very little vibration. The vast majority of that energy is consumed in the pulverization and fragmentation of the rock that the bit is in direct contact with. The way that the cycles of or repetitions of the hammer blows are timed as such that it produces a frequency of vibration that's very high. It's well above structural resonance, so you're not, even at very short distances, you're not unduly racking surrounding homes by matching their natural frequency response with the vibration frequency of the hammer. But instead what you're doing is producing very, very high frequency repetitions that have very low displacements associated with them. They're measured on the width of less than the thickness of a human hair, as the amount that the ground moves back and forth outside of the immediate area that the bit is in contact with the rock. That's known as the elastic zone outside that area.
Okay, thank you. And when you're saying hammering, that's the same?
Yes, the
Hydraulic breaker is the hammering, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that's what I have for now.
You're all set?
Thanks.
Okay, Ken Antonucci.
Yeah, just one more question. You'd stated that the larger hammer doesn't produce any larger vibrations. Now, is that just in the case here because of the type and the extent of the fractured ledge? Like if it was solid,
If it's
if it
rock
was solid,
that-
it would, and it didn't give, there
if
would
the
be more
rock
vibration.
doesn't give, the bigger hammer will produce
Right,
a
but-
higher vibration.
Right, but by virtue of your inspection of the ledge out there, noting its condition, that it's fractured, you wouldn't
Yes.
expect a larger hammer to produce any more vibration because it would just break the rock up faster.
It will probably produce less
Yeah,
because the rock will yield very quickly.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Does anyone else have any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, the only other comments I had and items I had have surround the hours of operation. There were significant number of problems with the with the Fellsway project, the 2 houses built on the Fellsway, where there were complaints of starting early. So I think that's an issue that we need to make sure doesn't happen on this site. Though I might be willing to move off the 9 o'clock, I'm not willing to go back to 7, because 7 then becomes 6:30.
We're not asking for 7. All we were asking for was 8.
So 8 to 4, Monday through Friday.
That's correct.
Okay, and is your client also aware that with the plans that are being submitted, what needs to be built is on the plans that were submitted? We did have some problems on the Fellsway also, where there were changes made to what was being built versus what was submitted and approved for the excavation.
I was not involved, as I believe you know, Mr. Chairperson, but I think the plans, as I understood it from the Fellsway project, were very rudimentary and perhaps even hand-drawn. We have architectural renderings. We're fully aware that that's what the board is.
Okay, as long as your client's aware that he has to build what he submitted with this petition. Okay, Michelle, did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to note that the hours of operation for the Fellsway were 8, and the complaint I received almost every day for several months straight was the trucks were there at 7, starting up at 7. And this was every single day, regardless of the fines. It was almost like it was accepted, well, I'll take the fine so I can start an hour early. It was, I'm not exaggerating, it was every single day I came into a complaint with the hours of operation, and that was an 8 o'clock start. So it also, and in fairness, it wasn't, that was this petitioner on Fellsway, but we had a similar situation on East Border Road. It was a different contractor. So it's a routine thing. I think you have to understand that if you say 9, you're probably gonna start getting complaints that they're starting at 8. So if you put 8, it's just, I don't know what it is, but there's something that's not understood when it says no equipment may start before this. It's just somehow not understood.
I think the petitioner's hearing loud and clear that the starting time is going to be closely monitored, and he's on notice that the starting time is the starting time, not an hour earlier. And, I have to believe that he will fully and diligently follow that starting time.
Yeah, there was always like, it was a new guy on the truck, or, so I just, the problem, and I'll just note, and I'll end, is it's not me monitoring it. I'm not gonna go to the site. It's the neighbors that are woken up and call. Constantly calling, and we will tell all the neighbors, call if there's a complaint, because we're not out at the site. You live near the site, so it's a process.
Well, we have some neighbors here that were at our neighborhood meeting in June, and I'm sure that they don't want to see it start any earlier than it's allowed to be started, so I would invite them certainly to monitor it themselves. And, but again, we heard the petitioner state loud and clear that he is fully aware that the starting time is the starting time and will not be violated.
You all set, Michelle?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilor. Ken Antonucci.
Michelle, I just want to clarify, again, this is just for this demolition portion, right? I mean, I'm not familiar with the complaints on the Fellsway, if that was during construction as well.
That was
as
during
demo?
excavation of the
Okay, so
rock. You're
this-
saying demolition, but it's excavation and ledge removal. It's all ledge removal. Right, not the construction of the house, right.
So, and that would include also, I'm sure Mr. Centrella knows that, that's staging the equipment, getting the trucks there early, having them idle. So when we say 8 o'clock, that means nothing, no activity.
Well, that is what we said, that's right, and that is what was agreed to before, too. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty clear. It's any ledge removal and/or any construction equipment operated for ledge removal or site grading preparation. So
Right, so
we
it's
tried to
not-
be as broad as we could.
Right, so it's not just you can sit there with the machines idling, the truck sitting there waiting and hitting, your 801, you start, pressing the trigger and start hammering. We don't want excavators or anything even running before 8 o'clock. Is that what you're saying?
That's what my understanding of the board's intent was, yes.
Just want to make sure that's clear.
And, I mean, if it comes to it and we do, and I hope we don't have it, but if we do, we'll ask compliance to shut the project down. And we certainly don't want to have excavate a project, and I'm sure the petitioner doesn't want to be shut down.
I will certainly, I believe the petition's well aware of the vehemence of the board's wanting this implemented and implemented properly, but I'll certainly make him aware of the city's authority to shut him down if he violates the provisions of a special permit.
Yeah, it would be the building commissioner.
Building commissioner, okay.
Would
I believe
go
the
out.
building commissioner's here?
He was here.
He was
so,
here.
Yeah.
Okay, no, as long as, I mean, we got it on the record and, that's the path we'll follow should there be a problem. Hopefully there won't be one. Are there any other questions for the petitioner? Michelle, anything else?
No, if you, I don't know at what point the petitioner had brought up the pre-ledge removal surveys, if you, what point you want to discuss that after the
Well,
public hearing?
No, we
or-
might as well do that right now.
So the ordinance does in fact state 300 feet. So offer and conduct a pre-ledge removal video and photographic survey of all buildings within 300 feet. And actually, it just states pre-ledge removal survey of all buildings within 300 feet of the property lines of the subject property. This board has authority to increase that. You can't be more restrictive, but you can be broader. And this is typically, we've had to really put in some details in these conditions, again, to make it very clear what exactly you're looking for. So that's why it says offer and conduct pre-ledge removal video and photographic survey of all buildings within 500 feet of the property lines of the subject property, which consent, and provide survey to property owner. Before ledge removal begins, provide city with list of all properties surveyed and contacted. That was also an issue that they said they contacted, not this petitioner, but a petitioner says they contact them. We have no way to prove that they were ever contacted. My point about the 300 is the ordinance says 300. We have expanded that on the last, dozen special permits to 500 because that is the notice requirement under the ordinance, is all abutters within 500 feet are notified of the project and of this public hearing. The map that you have, the enlarged map, is showing you the 500-foot radius around the project site. The petitioner had mentioned the number or the difference between 500 and 300. So for 500 feet, 108 abutters were notified. So for 500 feet, again, 108 abutters would be offered this survey. If you go to the 346 abutters will be offered the survey. That's not the same people that received notice of the hearing. I will state that this needs to be corrected, if you will, and brought up to speed. So this ordinance should match our notice provisions. It doesn't. The notice provision was changed after this ordinance came on the books in 2005. Since we started using the 500-foot for the abutters notices for all public hearings, that's when we began putting that in as well in this condition for any special permits for ledge removal. And that not only applies to the surveys, but also delivering written notice to all premises within 500 feet of the subject property, indicating the dates of ledge removal activity will be conducted, the hours beginning, ending daily, submit a copy of the notice to the city. So before they start the ledge removal, all 500 properties that receive notice of this hearing will get a notice that says on, February 1st, we will begin ledge removal during these hours of operation. We'll have contact information, et cetera. So again, the 500 feet is recommended because the ordinance, the other versions of the ordinance require the 500 feet, so.
If I may, Mr. Chairperson?
Yes.
As to the notice, we plan on doing certified mailings. If that needs to be included in a condition, that's fine, to prove that we've notified folks of their rights to be surveyed. You said you had difficulty, I think Michelle said there was some difficulty in proving that people have been notified of their right to get a survey. So we're gonna use certified mail, so that we'll have proof
Okay.
of the mailing. If that should be put in the condition, that's fine. We're gonna do it regardless, but secondly, on the issue of the 300 to the 500, I'm well aware that the city did increase the radius for notice, but I don't know that notice has any direct correlation with the issue of the vibration and the need for a pre-ledge removal survey. You heard Mr. Grohl state that after 150 feet, you just can't even know that there's vibration. That is, it's not measurable, it's not discernible. So 300 feet doubles that, and it seems to me that that is very reasonable and appropriate, but to then double the number of surveys would have to do just because the notice provision, the 500 feet on notice of any zoning petitions has been changed. Again, I'm not finding the connection between the notice to let people know about a zoning petition versus the need for a pre-removal survey, understanding that it can't be measured after 150 feet.
Now, I hear what you're saying. I'm looking at a map, though, at a very congested area that has a lot of houses in that area. And in the event that Mr. Grohl is incorrect, I'm worried about the potential for these other people to suffer damage from this excavation. So that I'm less driven by the fact that because our notice says 500 feet, than I am looking at the specifics of this neighborhood and seeing the number of potential problems that are associated here. Okay, so it's not just that it's based on the notice requirements of 500, so, let's make this that. That also, I'm worried more about the neighborhoods on Pamela Circle, Timothy Lane, McCormick Street, Circle Road, and the other people on Highland
But
Avenue.
many of those streets you name are going to, they will be surveyed, a number of homes on those streets will be surveyed.
A number of them, right. Right, I'd like it to be 500 feet.
I hear what you're saying, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairperson.
okay. Well, very good. Does anyone else have any other questions or concerns for the petitioner? No? Do you have anything else, Attorney Callahan, that you'd like to present?
No, we're fine. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. At this point in time, we will entertain anyone that would like to speak in favor of the petition. Anyone that would like to speak in favor. If you speak in favor, please come up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and also sign the clipboard with your name and address so we have the correct spelling. Anyone in favor? Michelle, do you have anything to read in favor?
No.
Very good. Last call for anyone in favor, seeing and hearing none, declare that part of the hearing closed. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone in opposition, feel free to come up and again, name and address for the record and sign the clipboard, and we can move from there.
Hi. I'm not necessarily in opposition, but it's just the first time I'm really hearing about the scope of the project. My name is Jennifer Salidas. I live on 29 McCormick Street, so I'm right up the street from where the project proposal is. And I'm on the same sort of patch of land that, you know what I mean, like that same block. And I was actually very interested in some of the comments you guys made and questions. I appreciate those questions because I didn't realize even that there were so many complaints about the Fellsway project, but that actually affected me quite a bit when that happened. My house was shaking every day for months, and there was definitely some settling that happened, and there was even a wire, like a cable wire that came down and hung in front of my property. Like, I could actually hit my head on it in the driveway, and neither cable company, of course, would take responsibility for it, and my dad had to get up on the roof and make it like tied, like a, I don't know, he like made a makeshift solution until literally just this year, we finally caught somebody doing some cable work, and we made them, you know, fix it and shorten the wires. So, so obviously, I'm at the top of, I guess we don't have a map, but I'm at the very top of the hill, when the way McCormick Street kind of corkscrews up, and there's ledge all around my house. I'm, you know, very prone to all of the vibrations that you guys were talking about, and, you know, I appreciate progress, but, you know, at the same time too, I do work at home, and I know that it's going to affect my my ability to concentrate and work as the Fellsway project did. And I made a few notes. I do have questions because I don't know, I'm not great sometimes with opening mail. I don't know if I was contacted already, so I do apologize if I was and I didn't respond or go to a meeting. I didn't know about anything until my dad actually sent me a notice that he received in the mail about this project, and I'm not sure why he received it because I'm the named owner of the property, but we both dually own several properties in the city, so, you know, maybe they just sent him the notice, and that's why I knew about this tonight. But I would love to know if, like, the plans are on a public site for the scope of the project, so that, you know, maybe I can review those a little bit better and understand what's going to be happening. I do think I heard a few times like the I believe that this is going to happen. I don't know if you guys did like a real survey of the rock to understand if it's actually fractured or you believe that it's fractured. So that would be interesting to know and understand more about. So are the fractures, I guess, surveyable is my question. And, you know, I do think, you know, given, you know, 4 months, it's probably going to be 6 months, let's just be real. So that is a long time, like a half a year to, you know, to disrupt the lives of the neighborhood. And then I would like to know if that survey, so like I know you've been talking about extending the area, so it's 500 feet from the site. Will that include my house? I would like to know if and who's doing the surveying? Is it someone that they're paying or is it independent? So those are my questions. Do I stay here?
Yeah, you can stand there if
Okay.
you want. Michelle, do you?
Well, first off, I guess a couple things. So the ledge removal, just briefly, just so we'll get to this quickly, that was done on Fellsway East, which are known as 481, I believe. Let me just see this, hold on one second. 481 Fellsway and 487. Your property was not within the 300, was not within 500, but at the time, we only used 300. So you weren't offered a survey, and you probably wouldn't have received notice of the hearing on that.
Right.
So that's that.
Well, right, so that occurred.
Right, so that I was just gonna.
even further away, and that
Right.
actually made my house shake every
Right,
single
that's
day.
why I was mentioning
Yeah,
that part.
yeah. No,
So-
I'm just pointing out. that-
Yes.
Yeah.
So on this one, though, so 300 feet, 300 feet, you said you're 29, you're definitely, you're within 300 feet, and you're within 500 feet, obviously, too. So you're definitely within the, if it ends up being only 300 feet that the survey's offered, it is, you would definitely be offered
Still be in
the
that
survey, yes. As to why you didn't get the notice, I don't know. You're definitely in a butter, and you should have received notice of a hearing in December, notice of a hearing that the
My
matter
dad
was
got the
being
notice,
tabled,
yeah.
and then this notice, so
Yeah.
that I don't know why. We use
Right.
the tax list, and I can see you listed as the owner, so
Yeah.
it should have gone to you. So, in terms of the survey, it's a private company, the developer hires.
Yep.
There's a form they usually use that says, we're hired by so-and-so, we're offering this, and it gives you an option to say yes or no.
So I guess my question is, so like, given that the survey will probably, I mean, it'll probably say that it, you know, that it's in their favor, maybe, I don't know. Do I have recourse as a homeowner in Malden if something should happen to my property to make it less safe or less stable? Who do I seek damages from?
So, yeah, so the survey, the survey is a video survey and a photographic survey. So they'll go in and survey your whole property, take pictures of everything in a video, and give you a copy of it. They do that before they start the ledge removal. If after, during the course of it, you see damages, you have to make a claim.
So it's a visual
Yes.
survey?
It's a
Gotcha.
it's a visual photographic video survey, so that you then have to make, individually, you'd have to make a claim against
Right.
their, I believe, insurance company.
Got it.
To get anything corrected. They are required to carry insurance for this project, a certain type of insurance, so it will be a private matter if there's any damage.
It would be a private matter, so it wouldn't be,
Yes.
you know,
You wouldn't come to
I
the
wouldn't
city.
have damages against the city.
No.
Okay. And then, I guess that's all my questions. So are you guys gonna make a decision on this tonight, or is this
In all likelihood.
in all likelihood?
Yeah, and I mean, the plans are available online. In the notice, there's a link to where the plans are available. I know it's short notice, I can certainly give you a copy of the plans if you want to look at it while the rest of the hearing goes on. At least you'll have a chance to, do you
I would
want me
love
to
that.
do that,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Do you have enough for everyone?
No, but I could certainly share this. There's a few extra sets if anybody wants to look at them.
If you want to put them down there and people
Yeah.
look at it, that's fine.
Yeah, it's up
but,
to you, it's up to you, or you can find it online.
Right.
Tell me what you
It's
want me to do.
online, so, all right, I won't trouble you for it now.
And they also have the plans up there, the full-size
Okay.
set of plans, so.
Very good, thank you. Okay, Kenny, did you have something you flashed on and then?
No, I'm set.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle was talking.
How you doing? Thomas Mann, 741 Highland Ave. The one thing I'm curious is has anybody from the MWRA been notified? Because you're all aware that there's a 6-foot water main, not 20 feet, where he's going to be hammering from, a concrete water main that feeds Woburn, North Reading, and Tewksbury, I believe. I lived there when they put it in. My friend was the consulting engineer. It was supposed to take 6 weeks to get up Highland Ave. It took them 6 months. They had a blast. They did not hammer. They did a good job. And I asked the engineer at the time, why aren't you hammering? He says, because that ledge, he said, goes all the way under your houses, on all of them. It was painstaking. The ledge, he said, he compared it to Manhattan bedrock. He blasted and blasted. I mean, they were doing pieces at a time. The water main that is in there is concrete. So I just want to know, who's going to inspect that? If that water main breaks, that fills up one Olympic-sized swimming pool in a minute. That's how much water is going through there. I walked it down it. I actually got in it, walked down a Pamela Circle from my house with my friend. He was inspecting it. He actually didn't want it. He was a concrete man. God rest his soul. He didn't want to actually use concrete. He was going back and forth with it. But that's what they did. It's basically, it's just a rubber gasket. It's 2 pieces stuck together in a slurry mix with stone backfill. But that main is sitting right on top of that ledge that he is going to be hammering, 20 feet from. It may start out as, I can tell you, I've lived up there for 30 years. That's hard bluestone in the ground. It's not volcanic rock. I watched them hammer it. I mean, I watched them blast it. They were having, like I said, don't believe me. It took them from May, I think the first week of May, till December to get all the way up to Medford. Medford made them change all the utilities. Malden wasn't smart enough to do it. Medford made them change all the utilities. That's how hard it was.
So I don't understand, if the MWRA has not been notified yet to make sure that this is okay, and everybody's gonna be good, and the line isn't gonna crack, because it's not gonna break right away. It's gonna crack, and it's gonna leak, and it's gonna leak. And then one day, it's just gonna break. And then Malden's on engineering disasters, because it will flood the lower end like you won't believe. It takes at least 3 hours to shut it down. So I just don't understand, it's not on the plans. How could this have got by everybody? I don't think you can make that decision today, not without knowing that this is gonna be fine. I mean, maybe they can open the street up while he's hammering and look at it, make sure nothing happens to it. But I mean, there's nothing here on it, nothing. And we're just gonna say, oh, okay. Has anyone from DPU been notified to make sure this is gonna be okay? And again, they did not hammer, they blasted. They didn't use any hammers the whole way up. And like I said, I saw it, I witnessed it. I walked from my house down to Pamela Circle underground with my friend.
Okay, Michelle, do you know if MWRA's been notified?
I don't know, I've just asked, I'm not sure if the building.
I can tell you, if I
yes.
lived downstream of this
It-
project,
It
I
is.
would not be, I'm upstream. If I was downstream of it, I can tell you right now, no way. I'd be in Woburn Superior Court tomorrow if you approve. No way, until someone told me that it was gonna be okay. I mean, none of us can know.
Yeah, it is,
I
it
don't
is
know.
shown
Maybe-
on the
maybe it'll be
plan.
fine, but I don't think any of us know that.
And the city engineer did review the plans, it is shown on the plan. MWA, existing MWRA water line is shown.
And it's concrete.
Mr. Chair, as a point of information,
Yes, if you speak in the microphone, Counselor.
yes, my engineer informs me, we're happy to have him come up and tell you any detail, but the MWRA needs to be contacted. We need to get a permit from the MWRA so that will be addressed.
Yeah, but don't you need to address that? I want to talk to an MWRA engineer and say, yeah, it's going to be fine.
Okay,
I don't
so-
care if I want someone from the MWR to say, that's going to be okay, you're good.
Right,
Maybe
so-
he comes in and says, absolutely not.
So basically, as I understand it, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, when they apply to MWRA, if MWRA doesn't approve it, they can't move forward. Is that correct?
I'm not sure the sequence. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking if you put in a condition that they must provide proof of MWRA approval, you know, prior to beginning, I guess I would say you would want to see that prior to beginning the project. It can't be a condition after it's already started. Typically, we would not notify MWRA. As I said, the city engineer did review the plan, so I'm presuming he saw it listed, noted on the plan. It says MWRA water line right down the street, so I don't know the sequence of it. I guess you could try to specify the
This isn't a
sequence.
water line. You saw what happened a few weeks ago, and this is a 6-foot diameter. This feeds cities. It's not, this is, I stood up.
Yeah, it says 72-inch MWRA, so 72 inches is 6 feet.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
I
so
walked
that's,
down it.
yeah.
Like I said, this feeds cities. This doesn't just feed like a house. You're talking about feeding.
No, I hear what you're saying, sir, and I don't know, I didn't contact MWRA. The Malden Engineering Department reviewed it, and it's as big as you're saying it is. I would like to think that they noticed it and they made a judgment on it. Though if the engineer has any comments on how he's going to be approaching the MWRA and when he plans on doing that, I'd like to hear that.
I will just tell you what the engineer told me when they were putting this in. I asked him why he wasn't using the hammer, and he said, no, because he was that concerned with cracking the foundations. Well, this now would be the opposite. It's a concrete water main that you're gonna be hammering 20 feet from. It's the opposite. So aren't you worried about cracking that line just as you would be cracking the foundation? The problem is you can't see it. That's the problem. You're not gonna know if we have a problem. You'll know 3 years from now, but you're not gonna know right away, because it's not gonna come up out of the ground. It's designed that way. It's actually, it's kind of like the way they design it. It'll just leach in the ground through the stone, but eventually it'll let go. Like you said, you're not going to know. You can't inspect it, like you look at a foundation, oh yeah, that's cracked. This is 10 feet underground. And again, it's not like a stupid little water main, this is feeding cities. They did it with, when Grace had the issue, when the wells in Woburn they had contaminated the wells, they had to put this up and through. And like I said, and I can tell you how hard the ledge was, because like I said, it was bluestone. They blasted, and it took, like I said, it took them 6 months just to get from the bottom up to the skating rink. And I remember I couldn't get in and out of my driveway. I was yelling at my friend. I said, how long? He goes, what do you want us to do?
Right.
But again, these people are the ones I'm more concerned because they're downstream of it. You know, they're the ones that are gonna get the brunt of it if something happens. And I think at least the people downstream should have been notified of this. It wasn't in any of wasn't like a big thing in the plans. Like, hey, this is an issue. You people downstream, if there's a problem, you know, they're gonna be long gone 3 years from now if it breaks. You know, it's not a problem till it's a problem. I mean, if you could see it, but you can't, that's the problem, it's 10 feet underground. I just thought you might like to know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, so just real quick, the name of the permit we need to get from the MWRA is an 8M permit. That's typically a construction phase permit. Wouldn't be appropriate for us to apply for that permit before we got the special permit. And it would be more than reasonable as part of your conditions to require that we provide proof of an 8M permit from the MWRA before any work commences. We need to do that anyways. They will assign an inspector. An inspector will be on site when they deem it to be appropriate for them to be on site. So they most certainly will be there doing inspections. But we would expect that to be a condition. We have to do it anyways.
Okay, thank you. Ken, are you all set? Michelle, do you have anything that's an 8M permit?
Sorry, was it AM or 8M?
8, I believe the numeral 8M.
Yeah,
Eight.
the number 8, parentheses, M, close parentheses.
8, okay, so 8M MWRA permit,
Correct.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition?
Hi, my name is Sauharda Nepal. I'm actually son of Sushil Nepal, 705 Highland Ave, Malden. So after COVID, like I'm the resident of the house, moved back home. So yeah, basically, I think that this construction has the biggest impact in our house. We're right next to it. And this has always been, council, is a very tough property. I know many people, I don't know the exact history, but just looking, because I can see it right from my window. Many engineers have come over the years, have taken a look at it, measured it, and it seems like it's a tough property. What I want is you guys to use good judgment. Is this property gonna, you know, because everybody has come out here and said the same thing. I'm gonna say the same thing. We all wanna be safe. I feel like this whole property in Highland Ave, McCormick Street, and we're all part of that large egg. Somebody used that analogy as an egg. That was a very good analogy. You don't want, and in this case, our margin of error is very thin, because if we are wrong, and if the crack happens, and our windows break, something happens, there's a huge crack that goes on. What that gentleman said, the water, you know, if it happens, it's just an issue. So I want you guys to there's nothing I can do, because I don't really know what's gonna happen in the future. There's a lot of research that's being done. I just want you guys to use the best judgment, because, you know, if there's an error, like, oh, go ahead, let's do it. And if there's an issue, there's an unnecessary stress in our lap. And on top of life stress that's already happened, last thing I wanna do is look outside my house and see a crack that's happened, or the window got blasted out. You know, so I just want you guys to use the best judgment, because we trust you. I love Malden. We've been living here for a while. I definitely trust you guys. Everybody looks so nice and, like, you know, serious, and no, I really do. And I want you guys to make the best judgment that's gonna make this resident of Malden just one. You can help one family, you're helping a community. So just our lives would be a lot easier, because right now, and we don't want any trouble. That's what it is. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Anyone else to speak in opposition? Michelle, do you have anything to read in opposition?
No. No.
And there's no one else? Okay, at this point then, I'd like to declare that part of the hearing closed. Michelle, do you have anything to read in general?
Yes, I have a memorandum from the city engineer. It's dated January 10th, 2023. It reads, engineering has reviewed the above site plans, rock excavation report, and stormwater report, and offer the following comments. The driveway is approximately 15 feet from the back of walk to the garage. Vehicles parked in the driveway are not allowed to extend into the walk. 2, no increase in stormwater runoff shall be allowed to flow onto the abutting properties. 3, the water service shall be bedded in sand with at least 6 inches all around the pipe. Water from the infiltration is allowed to drain through the sand, and the water trench is an outlet for the infiltration system. Provide washed crushed stone over the sand bedding throughout the full length of the water service trench. See attached detail. There's a diagram attached. 4, all existing abandoned water, sewer, and drain lateral connections shall be cut and capped at the main lines. All work within the right-of-way shall be in accordance with the standards of the City of Malden. 5, the applicant shall provide project timing, schedules, and sequence of development, including clearing, stripping, rough grading, construction, final grading, and vegetative stabilization. 6, provide PDF copy of as-built of water service, sanitary sewer, and storm drain system, including engineer certification of detention leaching basin once site work is completed. 7, the applicant shall arrange with the city engineer for scheduling the following inspections, or shall have a qualified third party as determined by the city engineer. Perform the inspections and submit a detailed report as to their findings. And it lists the first, initial inspection prior to approval of any plan. This will include inspection of on-site soil investigation testing. Second is erosion control inspections after site clearing, rough grading, and final grading to ensure erosion control practices are in accord with the plan. Third, inspection prior to backfilling of any underground drainage or stormwater conveyance structures. And 4th, final inspection when all work, including construction of stormwater management facilities and landscaping, have been completed. If you have any questions on the above comments or would like to discuss further, please do not hesitate to contact Assistant City Engineer John Getherall directly. This was from Yem Lip, the city engineer.
Okay, and there's nothing specifically in there regarding the MWRA
No,
line?
no.
Okay, thank you. So, with that said, that's everything read in favor, in opposition, and in general. Can you take us through your staff report, Michelle?
This is a staff report, this is a planning report and recommendation dated January 11th, 2023. It's incorporated herein by reference to the record, even though I won't read everything verbatim. We heard about the subject property, the description of the property, where it's located. It was formerly part of 695 Highland Avenue, was separated via approval not required subdivision plan in 2014. We heard what the proposal is to remove ledge, how they're proposing to do it. There's a description here I've provided of the single-family dwelling. We heard about the construction method being constructed in dual elevations, slab on grade, et cetera. I've given you a list of all the plans and information submitted in support of the petition. I won't read that, but it's here. You have received the site plans, plans for the house, also correspondence from the engineer, 2 different correspondence from the engineer, Richard Salvo, who we heard from, and also correspondence from Richard Grohl, who we heard from, regarding geotechnical information. You heard about the ledge removal, approximately 1,221 cubic yards. 1,177 of that is for the dwelling, garage, and yard areas, and then the 44 cubic yards are for the utility trenches. You heard the number of truckloads and number of weeks. For reference, I've given you a list of special permit petitions for ledge removal since 2005, which was the date the ledge removal ordinance was ordained. That's really just for your reference, context in terms of, you can see the amount of ledge that was removed and what the project involved. What the project was, excuse me, whether it was for a dwelling or a commercial facility, an addition, religious facility, et cetera. So giving you that list for your reference, so you can kind of get a sense of how much ledge we're talking about, since most of you would be familiar, well, many of you are familiar with most of these projects as you were sitting on the board, granting the special permits or denying them in several cases. You heard about the method and means to remove ledge, pre-ledge removal survey, erosion prevention plan, drainage calculation, stormwater management plan. Those are all required for any special permit. As I mentioned, city engineer reviewed the proposal, specifically looking at the drainage calcs and stormwater management plan. I just read the memo dated January 10th. Zoning, the property is located in Residence A zoning district. The proposed single-family use is allowed. All direct abutters to the northeast and west are single-family dwellings. To the south on the other side of Highland Avenue, single and two-family dwellings. And there are surrounding land uses of residential. Dimensional controls, the proposed dwelling complies with all dimensional controls for single-family dwellings. Regarding retaining walls and ledge cuts, the revised site plans do depict retaining walls that are less than 6 feet in height and proposed ledge cuts 6 feet in height, so that complies with the maximum. Parking requirements, the proposed dwelling has 3 bedrooms, complies with parking requirements. I'm giving you this information to let you know no variance is being sought for any dimensional parking requirements. This review by this board is the special permit for ledge removal and alteration of grade. If this permit's granted, the next step will be to obtain the building permit. Findings required to grant the special permit, and that's actually a different section number. Actually, I want to just quickly correct that for the record. So the findings are not under 700.13, that's the old version of the ordinance. The findings are under section 12.28.130 A and B. A is that the board must find the proposal is not detrimental to the neighborhood, and B, the board must find that the proposal will not adversely affect the general welfare or public safety. So provided you make those findings, do you want me to give the recommendation?
Yes, please.
So this recommendation is made prior to the public hearing, and provided that the board makes those 2 required findings, would be to grant a special permit subject to the following conditions. 1, all development shall be as per plans, which are incorporated herein by reference, unless and except as modified by these conditions. 2, all ledge rock removal excavation may be done only by hydraulic hammer mounted on an excavator, may include pre-drilling holes, and any ledge rock removal excavation by blasting or any other mechanical or other means is prohibited. 3, during site development, implement erosion controls as per plan. 4, offer and conduct pre-ledge removal video and photographic survey of all buildings within 500 feet of the property lines of the subject property, which consent and provide survey to property owner. Before ledge removal begins, provide city with list of all properties surveyed and contacted, and I'll add and proof of mailing. 5, during any ledge removal activity, place seismograph on site and at the following properties or property line width. I've listed 705 Highland Ave. The ordinance requires the seismograph be placed on site. It's up to this board's discretion whether you want to specify any other properties. 705 Highland Ave is the closest dwelling. Submit seismograph tapes to fire chief for review daily. 6, maintain liability insurance of a minimum of $100,000, $300,000 with City of Malden named as lost payee. 7, during site development, hire fire details and provide a fire watch at any time as the fire chief deems appropriate and necessary in his reasonable discretion. 8, during site development, hire local police details as the police chief deems appropriate and necessary in his reasonable discretion. 9, deliver written notice to all premises within 500 feet of the property lines of subject property, indicating the date or dates of ledge removal activity will be conducted in the hours of beginning and ending daily for the same. Submit copy of notice to the city. 10, the maximum height post-development of any ledge cut or retaining wall is 6 feet. 11, the hours of operation for any ledge removal and/or any construction equipment operated for ledge removal or site grading preparation are 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. 12, install stormwater management system and mitigation as per plan with any modification subject to approval of city engineer. Comply with all recommendations of city engineer as stated in memorandum dated January 10th, 2023. 13, submit as-built site plan including driveway, all stairs, walkways, retaining walls, and ledge cuts. 14, provide construction schedule and owner, site engineer, geotechnical engineer, and contractor shall attend a site meeting with city engineering department and city planner prior to the start of work. I would recommend 15, provide MWRA permit, I'll put in parentheses 8M, or any other required, since I'm not sure if there ends up being anything else, to the city prior to beginning the project.
Are there any other condition recommendations?
No, the letter from the engineer that I mentioned, it'll be incorporated, we should say it's, incorporated, as stated in the memorandum, incorporated herein by reference, and I'll attach it to the decision. Sometimes these letters get separated, and then we don't know what was said.
With that letter, with that date?
Yes, that will be January 10th. That will be incorporated herein by reference
Okay,
and
Pat Hayes.
attached.
Pat Hayes.
Thank you. Just on that last condition, Michelle, to make sure it says MWRA approval, not just the permit, but we want their full approval and any, conditions or recommendations they have.
Okay, because it's funny, because originally I had written down provide MWRA approval, obtain and provide, but then I thought it would be a permit, so which do you prefer?
I think you want their approval
I
before we
like
start.
permit and approval.
Just submitting for the permit.
Okay.
We don't want them to start until we have full approval.
Okay, so provide MWRA permit and approval
Yeah,
to city prior to
beginning work.
beginning work.
Now, do we, is this something Yem is able to, I mean, as the gentleman said, it's 10 feet down. Without digging it up, I don't know how they're going to inspect it. So, do you know, Michelle?
I don't know.
How they go about okay, Ken, I'll catch up with you a second. I'm just real concerned that something's going to happen to this cement pipe, which I don't know, it sounds like it went in a few years ago, so I don't know how much the concrete might erode already. And then you add in the distress that might be caused from the ledge removal.
I don't know how the MWRA looks at the permit or would give its approval. I don't know the process.
Yeah,
But
hold
there
on.
must be some way, right?
Eric McCush.
I'll yield to Ken, because it looks like he had a response to that.
Okay, Ken Antonucci.
Yeah, just typically, water mains can be inspected, video inspected remotely. They send like a robot camera through. So I'm sure when they get built, they get inspected prior to use, but then when there are issues, they do send crews with cameras. So that may be part of MWRA's conditions on approval that, post-construction, they did a video inspection.
And do you have any experience if they encounter and find problems? What do they do?
They would have to someone would have to repair the pipe.
Okay. Okay,
So, I mean, if you wanted to add into that condition also, MWA approval permits or,
Well, if they
with
give us the
condition-
permit
with
and
conditions.
approval, then,
Put MWRA permit and MWRA approval to city prior to beginning the project.
Because the permit, I would imagine, would have list conditions on it.
Mr. Mann, is that something agreeable? Or-
That line can't be video inspected. It's not possible.
Oh, okay,
Shut the whole,
okay, fair enough, but,
open the street up while he was there and look at it.
but,
That's not like, that feeds cities, they can't.
right, but what I'm asking, if MWA were to approve it, would that satisfy you? I'm not saying that's gonna prevent problems.
I just wanted to make them aware of it. I'm not downstream of the project. I just remember when they put it in, what they went through to get it in and how old it is now. And to me, I'm working in Medford right now. I talked to the building inspector in Medford, he goes, they will not allow it in Medford. You cross over Rita Drive, there's no camera anywhere near that line. That I do know.
Okay,
So, like I said, I just think an MWRA engineer, if he says it's okay, he comes in and says, yeah, you're gonna be fine, or maybe they open it up and they put sensors down or something.
Yeah.
But just to say, oh, to approve it, I think it's kind of, that's taking a really big risk. I mean, again, that would flood all of the lower Highland Ave, all of the Fellsway. It would be catastrophic if that line ever broke. It was explained to me, but they did a really good job putting it in. It was painstaking. It was meticulous.
Yeah.
Because of that, but I don't think they ever anticipated that kind of excavation being done 20 feet from it. And so many
Yeah.
people have tried an excavation. Yeah. Like I said, I know if you cross Rita Drive, Medford doesn't allow anything. I mean, even when they did the gas line, they just did the gas line right on Rita Drive.
right,
I know they were out there, and all they were doing there was a gas line.
yeah.
That they had, and I know they were out there to make sure.
Okay, thank you. Counselor, you have something, you look like you want to say something?
Well, I know, Mr. Chairperson, you seem concerned about this issue, and I understand our seismologist has some information to give to the board, if you so choose, to explain the cement and the vibrations. I've asked him to keep it short, but if you'd like to hear from him.
Okay, if it finishes with him guaranteeing that nothing will happen to this.
This is a reinforced concrete pipe. It's embedded in rock. It is surrounded, it is an engineered material that was, those are precast pipes that are cast in a controlled environment. This isn't just concrete being cast by a guy that's working out in the field. They make this concrete specifically to retain the internal pressures of the water that is being forced through it and the weight of the material that's being buried around it. It's held in what's known as perfect compression. It's a perfectly circular pipe. It's indestructible. They make bomb shelters like that. Okay, if you look at bomb shelters, modern bomb shelters in Israel, Japan, places like that, they are circular concrete reinforced pipe that are buried in rock, and they're indestructible. There is no level of vibration that he could generate with a hammer that would cause damage to this pipe. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the MWRA commonly hammers right around their pipes, their water pipes, gas lines, all kind of stuff every day. They would be stopped from making an argument against hammering 20 feet from the pipe when they've been hammering next to their pipes up right next to them, within the same trench that the pipe occupies. The other thing is that reinforced concrete is 3 times more resistant to vibration than the rock that he's hammering, and it's reinforced, and it's held in perfect compression. And when they blasted for that trench, the reason they had to blast was because the rock was completely confined in the trench. It had no place to move to. All of the rock that the applicant is going to be working with is sitting up in a high standing feature, and it is weathered. I did examine it, I did look at it, and I can assure you that it is highly fractured, it is rhyolite, and it will break according to the way we say it will break.
Okay. A question for you, and if you don't know the answer, that's fine, just let me know. You were involved with the Fellsway, the 2 lots on the Fellsway that were excavated? Because you've been before us before, and it sounded like you were involved in that project in Medford,
Yes.
right? Did you encounter this MWRA pipe in either of those? Do you have any idea how far away from your projects in those other locations were from this MWRA pipe? Because I imagine this MWRA pipe runs for a while. He's saying it runs up to Woburn.
Well, the pipe, as far as I know, just runs down Highland Avenue.
Runs all the way up Highland Avenue, all the way up.
And it,
Okay.
as far as the hammering that was already performed out there at Fellsway East and all over that neighborhood, because quite frankly, the neighborhood is all rock. Every time that you do any work in that neighborhood, it involves hammering in one form or another. They have to break rock in order to get repairs effected. They have to break the concrete. They have to break, they're out there with breakers doing all kind of things because every square inch of the neighborhood is rock. And it's an improved environment, meaning that where there isn't rock, there's concrete. So it would be very disingenuous to say that this pipe has never been exposed to vibrations. And I'll also mention that trucks as heavy as 107,000 pounds drive over that pipe every day. And it has not been destroyed yet, and nor will it, because it is designed to withstand H20 loading, which is 20 tons per axle. So there is no chance that they will cause damage by hammering nearby to this pipe. It's basically the closest thing you're going to find to a bomb shelter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Chairman, can I just add one thing to that? And I don't think I was clear. The MWRA 8M program was established specifically to protect the MWRA's infrastructure around construction projects. So it's a very specific permit. So it's not like we're going to be filing something to the MWRA and it's going to go off in a la-la land. They have a very specific permit process that ensures that a construction activity will not have a negative impact on their infrastructure. That's the exact purpose of the 8M program. That's why it was created. So the MWRA will be looking at this exactly to make sure that our construction efforts will not have an impact on their pipe. We file many of these permits with the MWRA. We do it all the time. Anytime you're working in a road that's near there, you have to file it. We've done construction activities that are much more invasive, much closer to the pipes than this will be. But the sole purpose of that 8M permit will be so the MWRA is convinced that the construction activity will not damage that pipe. That's the sole purpose of that permit. So you can be assured that they will be looking at it at that specific pipe in that specific section with this specific construction activity to make sure that it won't impact it. So the permit, and they won't issue the permit until it's gone through their engineering department, their legal department, their weekly meeting. At that point, they will issue the permit through their legal department to us, which would be their approval.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on that.
Okay.
How long does that typically take?
So they have a committee that meets several times a month, so it could be about a 3 to 4 week process.
And when do you plan on filing that if the special permit were granted tonight?
We would we would, if the special permit was filed tonight, we'd file that permit immediately so that we would likely have it prior to the appeal period running out.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, Mr. Chair, is because there's not a situation, but there's no actual building permit that gets issued for the ledge removal. The special permit gets issued, and then once the appeal period is up, they can begin if they're in compliance with all the conditions. So if we say prior to beginning the project, my concern or question is just that it doesn't actually start before we've actually seen this permit and approval from MWRA.
If we put a condition in saying they
Right.
can't start until
Exactly.
we get
Right.
the approval, would that cover us
Yeah,
on that
Yeah.
loophole, Pat?
I think it'd be prior to the commencement of work, we have to provide proof of
That's what we have.
approval from the
That's the
MWRA.
condition Michelle wrote.
Okay.
We need to do it anyway, so.
Okay, I thought I understood from Michelle that there was a sort of a loophole they could slide in under
Well, I don't know, if we just say prior to beginning the project, they could start grading, they could start some other stuff. I'm saying, do we want any start at all?
No activity until
Okay.
they get approval for this.
Sorry, I just want to make one comment, because in the past, there's been very little oversight on stuff like this. So like, even when you guys have said, don't start building, or there's a condition that needs to be met, I've actually grew up on the east side of Malden, right by the Neal Street project, which almost killed a baby, okay? Ledge fell right down
Yeah,
on
I'm
the
familiar
house.
with it,
Remember
yep.
that house? Okay, so, you know, my parents still live over in 18 Bowman Street, and, you know, there was a permit that was actually not approved. I think they had the process that they went through, and then the guys went ahead and dug some foundation anyway. They went ahead and poured. So my concern is that you guys make decisions here, who's gonna oversee it? That's all.
Thank you.
So I've rewritten this a little bit. There shall be no activity under this special permit without providing the city with the MWA permit and MWA approval.
Okay, and to answer her question, who would, is that the building inspector?
That would be the building commissioner,
Building
Nelson
commissioner.
Miller, who's here, and he's listening to all this. So he's aware, I believe, of the concerns. It will be my office, his office, Inspectional Services that is monitoring this. Fire department, you know, gets involved in some of the monitoring as well. Police chief, fire chief, they're, you know.
Okay,
But yeah, it will come in under that, but, you know, typically any of the questions, complaints will come in through our office or anonymously on the.
okay, as long as everyone
Yes.
understands that should this move forward, nothing happens until we get that 8M approval.
Excuse me, I just want to make one other point. While they were putting that line in, by the way, yeah, two pieces came out. They had stress cracks in them. So I don't know what he's, while they were putting it in. My friend was the engineer. So don't ever think that everything's perfect, because they took two sections out that, when they x-rayed it, they had stress cracks in them. So
Okay.
nothing is fail-safe.
Thank you very much.
And that was brand new sections.
Thank you.
So there shall be no activity under the special permit unless and until
MWRA approval.
right, MWA permit. MWA permit and approval are provided to the city,
Right,
okay?
right.
I'll put 8M in parentheses.
And that's number 15.
That would be 15.
Okay. What? I'm sorry, Henry?
I was just wondering aloud if it needs to be, you know, more muscular than that, and in the fact that the special permit is actually void if the MWRA doesn't come across with their approval.
Well, I don't know about putting in the permit is void. This is a condition that must be met before any activity can begin. So if the condition is never met, they can't.
That should satisfy it.
They can't
Yeah, all right.
active. Now, this permit is only good for a year from the date of granting, so,
That's helpful.
you know, they'd have to begin work under it for it to stay active, to stay valid. I mean, I suppose you could put that language in, we've never put that in before.
Okay.
And I was also just gonna note the ward city councilor is here as well, so she's hearing all the concerns. Counselor Linehan, who I'm sure may be contacted by neighbors if there's any questions or concerns.
Okay. Are you all set, Henry?
Yes.
Ken Antonucci.
Yeah, Michelle, I don't think I would specifically list the 8M permit. I would say any and all permits, because we don't know if there are other permits beyond that they would require.
There shall be no activity under the special permit unless and until all required MWRA permits and approvals are provided to the city.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Michelle? No? Is there a motion? Ken Antonucci.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the special permit with the 15 conditions.
Okay, Ken's made a motion to approve with the conditions that we just went through, including the approval from the MWRA. Henry Susi.
I will second that motion.
Very good. Henry Susi has seconded it. Okay, give me a second here, Michelle, to get ahead of you. Okay, go ahead.
Ken Antonucci,
Yes.
Diane Chuha,
Yes.
Tawadich Gebrselassie,
Yes.
Risa Gray,
Yes.
Patrick Hayes,
Yes.
Eric Henry,
Yes.
Eric McCush,
Yes.
Henry Susi,
Yes.
Chuck Ioven.
Yes. So the petition has been granted with conditions which include approval from the MWRA prior to any activity being conducted. And Councilor Linehan's here, the building commission is here. We're here, and it's been well documented with regard to the hours of operation and the survey requests and the requirements. So it has been approved with conditions. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for your input. Yes. We're going to take a 2-minute bio break. We'll be back shortly.
That sounds crazy.
It is, and it is.
You think, can you shut your mic?
Mr. Henry, do you have anything? Sounds
Yes.
like you've got some stuff coming down the pike at you on affordable housing.
Just a little bit, and I'm not volunteering for nothing else there. I just want to make that clear. But, yeah, no, we have a couple of the petitions that are ongoing. We are planning to meet next week. So the public is definitely invited and cordially invited to attend. And so looking forward to participation and stuff like that. So good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
We'll do under old business, we'll discuss the binders.
Sure. I
Okay.
didn't put it as a separate.
Okay, so we'll do that under, well, since I've broached it already. We have the binders. I think this is going to be a living document, but it's an attempt, even though we've all received in parts and pieces, the stuff associated with affordable housing, inclusionary zoning. Michelle and Linda have done a terrific job on pulling together some of the most germane pieces of information, what the ordinance is, what some of the presentations were that led up to it. Eric, to your question, we've got some stuff on what the current balances are in the various pieces of the, I have one, thank you, yes. What the various pieces are in the CPC Affordable Trust Fund, what some of the other pieces, because there's 5 categories of it. Our estimate wasn't that far off. I was off by a couple $1,000. But when Nelson came in for the $320,000, I suspect that's going to jump over to $350 when we update in July of 2023. But this is a bunch of information. I'll let Michelle speak to it a little bit, but you have the option of taking it with you and bringing it back when you need it, or leaving it on the cart, and Michelle will bring it and provide it for us when we need it. I personally am taking mine with me because I tend to go through the stuff and read it at my leisure rather than during the meetings. So that's an option. Michelle, any comments you want to make about it, or?
No, there's a lot of information here. We tried to really give you some, there's a couple flow charts, different ways to look at it, how these new affordable housing units being created. Then, as Chuck mentioned, there's a lot of backup documentation. You have the zoning ordinance, you have the financial docs. These are the current accounts for the community preservation funds, for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, for the Community Development Block Grant budget. There's also affordable housing money in that. You have the Housing Trust Fund Action Plan, which came up a couple times. You have the actual Housing Trust Fund Ordinance as well. Then there's a lot of information you can see. A couple of these things, as Chuck said, they're living documents. So, for example, 6, subsidized housing inventory, that's the current one on file, but that's going to change once the 2020 census numbers come into play. And what I'll do, and the reason we decided to do the 3-ring binder is so if new information comes, we can easily add it. The population and household income data, same thing. It's dated May, but it's still current, but they're going to get us a new version of that. You also have the housing needs assessment and then the GLAM analysis. I didn't put names on anything. You're welcome to put your name if you want to put notes or you want to get your book back. That's perfectly fine. We just didn't know if people were going to use them, keep them, have them as a resource on the cart. You're welcome to take it home. It is yours. And you should be able to tell from the agenda a case is coming up, because it will say inclusionary zoning special permit. So you'll know, oh, I should bring the binder if you take it home. If not, I'll try to do a reminder. There's nothing yet in the pipeline. There's a couple things that we're working on. They're permitting planning stages, but for example, the couple cases coming up next month, they're not affordable housing projects. So I could try to let you know, and like I said, it's up to you if you want to take it home. You want to take it home and bring it back, that's fine. And that's it, but
And thank you, Michelle, for getting this together in time ahead of these,
the next petitions.
these petitions that might be coming down the pipe, because some of this stuff, you know, collecting and looking and reading some of this stuff as it's come before us, it can be complicated and it can turn back
Yeah.
on itself, so it's
And
nice to
you
have a
don't have to-
reference
right.
resource.
You don't have to memorize or know all this, but sometimes, like today, Affordable Housing Trust came up, and it would have been nice to say, oh, what does this say? Oh, here it is. I didn't bring these all out because we were in midstream, and Chuck said, don't start to complicate things, so, but if anybody wants to read about that, you can now read about that. Some of this, as Chuck said, you have already been given. You were just given different pieces. As the materials were produced, you were given them. But now it's all, at your request, put into a binder,
In one resource.
into one resource, so.
And I didn't want to pass them out earlier because I didn't want, these are a tool to assist us with affordable housing and inclusionary zoning. It wasn't what that paper was about, so I didn't want to start getting spun up inside what we were being provided and what some of the nuance might have been with that. I didn't want that complicating the paper that was in front of us. Because I think the paper that was in front of us was pretty straightforward with regard to providing more flexibility to the people to either pay or build more. So we knew we were going to be passing these out tonight, and it's going to be ahead of the projects that might be coming down the path towards us. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Michelle, are there hard copies of the new zoning ordinances?
I don't know, they just did a couple more amendments, so I don't know if what I have includes those, but I can check on the card. What's online is current, except for the two that just got passed last week.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, enjoy the reading, and the last item on the docket for this evening is planning board elections of offices. We haven't done it in a while, and we should. What we're going to be voting on this evening is chair, vice chair, and clerk. I will turn over the gavel to the clerk, who will run the nomination and voting for the chair, and then we'll turn it back and we'll proceed with whoever the chair elected is, will then run it for vice chair and clerk. Okay, Ken.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to nominate Chuck Iovan as, to continue on as chair of the planning board. Do we need a second?
Diane Chuha.
I second that motion.
I guess all in favor.
Are there any other?
Well, do you accept this nomination?
I will accept it.
Yeah, does anybody else interested? Seeing and hearing none, to quote the venerable chairman, everybody in favor? Does it have to be, is it just
It can
all in
be-
favor?
Since there's only one, it can be
Okay,
voice vote.
okay.
If it's more than one, we'll do a ballot.
All right, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. Against? None? Abstains? None? So congratulations.
Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate all your hard work and your support, and thank you very much. The next position that we will take nominations for is anyone that would like to nominate for vice chairperson. Anyone vice chairperson? Eric McCush. The last vice chair was Patty Lawhorn, who resigned, and we just haven't gotten around. I was chairman for 17 years under Tim Glenn. You know, so it is a position. It's not one we have to have. We have to have a chairman. We have to have a clerk. The role of the vice chairman is if the chairman is absent or has to recuse himself or is unable to vote, the vice chairman would step in and be the person who presides over the hearings or the meetings at that time. In the past, as vice chair, when we were doing the visioning and the master plan steering, I chaired some committees and some projects as vice chairperson in that time doing that. So that's the type of thing that they do. As I said, we don't have to have a vice chairperson, but we have had it in the past, and I think it makes sense. It provides a little more flexibility. If I got hit by a bus, the next person would be the clerk that would be the person that would preside. And then if the clerk weren't here or whatever, then we've never had that.
We don't come here.
We've never
Not
had-
coming.
Meeting's
Canceled.
Yes.
Canceled.
No quorum.
But that's sort of the order of procedure. Eric McCush.
I'd like to nominate Ken Antonucci for the vice chair position, if he so wants it.
Okay, Eric's made a motion to nominate Ken. Diane Chuha.
I'll second that motion.
Diane Chuha seconds the nomination for Ken. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations? Seeing here and none, declare that part closed. All those in favor of Ken Antonucci as vice chairman of the Malden Planning Board? All those say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Congratulations, Ken. The next position will be clerk, as Ken's moving to vice chair. Are there any nominations for the clerk? The clerk role has changed a little bit because of technology. When we were more manual organization, they played a more active role in the minutes and sending out notices and filing things like that. A lot of that stuff, which is done now electronically, or we just don't do anymore because of technological advancements. But we still need a clerk because they sign the public hearing notices. They're the contact from the mayor's office. And there's still a role, and we still need the clerk. As I said, if for some reason the chair and vice chair are unavailable or unable to lead the meeting, the clerk would then lead the meeting, which I can only remember happening once in the last 40 years, 38 years. So for nominations, Henry Susi.
I'd like to nominate Diane Chuha. Diane, don't kill me.
Henry's nominated Diane Chuha. Is there a second? Eric Henry.
I second that.
Eric Henry seconds Diane Chuha. Are you all set? Were you?
No, that's fine, I can do
Okay. Tawadage?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for clerk? No other nominations for clerk. All those in favor of Diane Chuhara as clerk of the Malden Planning Board, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Let the record reflect, none opposed. Congratulations, Diane Chuhara. Well, typically Michelle's been doing it.
I think Patty used to read them as vice chair though, right? So if it's not clerk.
Patty was the clerk, then Patty moved up to vice chairperson, and then she left the board. When she left, she was vice chair. Yes, Lorraine Danka. Yes. But Michelle has been reading them more recently. There isn't a formal thing. I mean, whoever, I typically pull on Michelle. Doesn't matter who. I mean, I've read notices in the past as vice chair and chair, so it's really whoever is here and can do it.
I mean, some boards, the clerk reads all the letters, things like that, too, you know, if letters in favor, in opposition, so,
Yeah,
you know.
they do that on the city council, I believe, the clerk.
Well, right, but I meant like Board of Appeal and stuff, so,
Yeah.
you know, you're welcome to read as much as you want.
Yeah. But, okay, any other comments or questions? Any other new business? Next meeting is Wednesday, February 8th. I understand we have 2 hearings already.
One of them requires review by the Historical Commission. Again, the system glitch is not fixed, so the flagging system's not working. So things that need to be reviewed are not being reviewed.
Oh,
They're
okay.
starting the zoning process when they need to go through that process first. So we're trying to get caught up really quickly in the next week, and hopefully 2 will be ready. If not, at least 1 will be.
At least 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so February 8th, it appears we'll see you all. At that point, is there anyone who would like to make a motion to adjourn?
My favorite part.
Diane Chuha, motion to adjourn at 9:52. Ken Antonucci, second.
Yeah, I have 9:56.
Oh, I'm just,
Where are
go-
you? Oh, yeah,
I was
don't
just
think
going
that's
off that.
right, yeah.
Okay, well,
I got 9:56 on my phone.
I'm looking here, so anything that I do, add 4 minutes. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Opposed? None. Motion carries.